So I have a couple characters that we can talk about right off the bat, especially in the context of negative growths, and because Raisins is not as familiar with Thracia as I am, I thought it would be interesting if he gave his first impressions so far of the characters, and then I'll add on to it whatever is missing from my millions of playthroughs of Thracia.
I think so.
Here's some Leaf for you.
I think so. So I'll just be completely upfront and honest with you guys. I've not beaten Thracia. I've played up to about Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is the one with defense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. I played up through that map. And I know a thing or two about some of the units, and I know about the mechanics and whatnot, but I don't always have the context of the whole playthrough. So, who's my first impression of Leaf? Well, he's not as good as Roy. No,
I knew you'd say that too. I knew you'd say that.
No, he's a pretty cool lord, actually. Very good. I mean, like, there's a lot of ways to offer utility with the way the supports work in this one. Supports being free, supports being actually quite meaningful with 10 points of hit, avoid, crit, and crit avoid, I think. And Leaf provides it to a lot of people. Leaf is definitely, like, got a lot of great utility all throughout the game. Unfortunately, this Leaf, his stats are probably not going to be anything to write home about. I mean, this is literally as good as they're going to get, if I recall.
Yeah.
Promotions still increase stats, right? They don't decrease them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Leaf's promotion isn't very good, but yeah, they do.
I mean, it still counts, right?
Yeah,
for sure. But I mean, that's generally my first impression of Leaf. I know that there's like a ton of utility. There's even like a bunch of utility weapons that he can carry that can make things easier for your team around him. In my opinion, I think he's a really cool lord. I love using him, and I don't know. I just think he's cool. Supports are fun. What you think?
Yeah, so Leaf is a unit that I've made a waifu video on because he's just so interesting. There's so many different facets about him that factor into how useful he is as a character, and some of them we'll probably be better off discussing as we go along. Lightbrand is the primary thing, the primary reasons why I think Leaf is good. It's a personal weapon that has 60 uses and 1 to range, and it's a pretty rare thing for short uses in Fire Emblem in general, but Leaf just has 60 uses straight off the bat, and you should use this weapon whenever it remotely conveniences you, because it casts magical damage from range, which will let him damage things that he usually wouldn't do a whole lot of damage to with the Iron Sword. And if you just try to like use him with Iron Sword, you're gonna be really disappointed because his bases are horrendous and his growths, they're like okay by Thracia standards, but they don't really get him anywhere. So you really want to be use the Lightbrand whenever you can. If you're playing Thracia normally, if you're playing negative growths like I am, then you want to use Leaf as little as possible because he is a game over condition, and the more I level him up, the easier I will get a game over, the more easily I will lose characters.
I thought you said his growths weren't that good.
Yeah, they are not as good, but surprisingly when you play negative growths, they end up being better than you want them to be, so he'll lose stats fast and make himself vulnerable to like getting doubled or getting one-shot by things, which even does sometimes in normal playthroughs too, because, I mean, the Iron Sword weighs 6 and he has 5 con, like he loses 1 speed.
Yeah, come on.
If you're not super familiar with Thracia mechanics, I don't really want to explain them all in depth right now, but one thing I do want to mention, for example, is this game, it's kind of like a fun hybrid between stuff that made Genealogy fun for me and stuff that made the GBA games fun. So for example, it has the GBA games' con system, where your weapons, the heavier they are, the more they reduce your speed, and you can offset that with your constitution. And this might also be a good time to point out that I am playing this on the newest version of the translation patch made for Thracia, which has a ton of quality of life features in it. For example, almost everything you see at the top right is, I don't think everything is new, but it looks a lot better than what it used to with old patches. Things like the Lightbrand properties being explained right here was not previously possible. Stuff like the skills having in-depth description, for example, what Leaf's adept does, I don't have to explain it because you can see it on screen. It's super convenient. Weapon ranks usually weren't displayed in Thracia, but now you can not only see, well, they were always displayed. Like we always knew Leaf had seasoned swords, but what is new is that you can actually see how many weapon uses he's already done on his way to B. So, like in GBA, you can see he's at C and then 0 weapon experience. He can get more as he goes through the game, just like in GBA. So all that stuff is made possible by the team of Little Master, and I really want to be appreciative of their efforts. And also thanks to Ultimage for supplying this version of the patch, which not only has the Little Master improvements, but also negative growth stuff on top of it. But yeah, Leaf's utility is good. He's forced in every chapter. You want to use him. He's a leadership star at some points, not right now, but you have one which will passively increase everyone's hit and avoid. And if you want a more in-depth analysis on him, I made a waifu video. You should check that out as well.
For sure. I think we could prattle on and on about Leaf.
Yeah.
And how cool he is, but we're about to set a new world record for longest time without a player phase input. So you know,
I know, right? I mean, this is a chill chapter 1 track. I don't mind it, but we should probably do analysis. I know some people watch these only for the analysis though, so that's why I want to do them proper.
Oh yeah, should we do them all at one go, or should we drip feed them? You know, like we got.
I know, right?
What did we do for FE6? I can't even remember.
I think we did make some inputs. We did make some inputs in between, but screw it.
Okay.
I just want to get these out of the way, and then we can actually play the game. So
we move Ivel and talk about Ivel.
Yeah, I want to do Ivel last because she's so hilariously in this context. So how about we do Finn? Next?
Okay.
So what do you think of Finn?
Well, he's got a Brave Lance, man. Like, come on, dude. Like, need I say more? I definitely use him a lot for capture utility in the early game. I'm kind of a fiend for capturing, which I probably shouldn't be, right? Like, I don't need to spend 2 Brave Lances to sell an Iron Sword or something. Like, I can get away with not doing that, I think. But I don't know. I enjoy using the capture mechanic in the early game, and Finn is like definitely the best suited to that. I do know the Iron Sword thing is kind of interesting because I think all mounted units can dismount. When they dismount, they use swords or bows if they're a bow knight, which I think is just super cool. I think that, like, I don't know, I just think it's super cool that the knights had to dismount, especially when they go indoors and they get to use swords. It's really neat. Like, I don't know, some cool visualization. You got this lance knight, but I don't know, they can scrap with a sword. It just warms my heart to know that he's a man of many talents. You know, I'm happy for him.
Yeah, Finn is definitely all about the Brave Lance and not a whole lot of other things, but the Brave Lance and the combination with him being mounted as well is super important because it allows him to capture just about anything due to the way that Constitution works. The game basically thinks that Finn has 20 con, and you can only capture units that are lighter than you, so the extra weight of Finn's horse allows him to capture just about anyone. And I mean, the Brave Lance, it's in the name, it's brave, so it hits twice. And that makes capturing very easy because capturing normally reduces your stats. I'll demonstrate how it works in like a second, because I'm definitely going to capture some enemies in this chapter. And he has Miracle, which isn't too relevant. Like if you're about to die and you're relying on Miracle to survive, which in this case is just like a luck-based thing. Sure, there's a good chance he will dodge thanks to Miracle, but you shouldn't really rely on it. But it's a nice extra safety insurance, or almost insurance, when he's like about to die and you're like taking a risk anyway. And he has a leadership star, so he, like Leaf, later on provides, I want to say, yeah, it's 3% hit and avoid for everyone whenever he's deployed. So even if you're not attacking a single time with Finn throughout the map, it's still viable to deploy him, even in an indoor map, just for leadership star. I wouldn't always recommend it, but it's sometimes good. And also, he just has a really high base level and high stats. Like, he's just good statistically. So he's not quite a pre-promote, but he's still almost as strong. That's why I really like him. I plan to use Finn as much as it takes in this game to promote him. And depending on how his stats work out in negative growths, that might be about it. But if he's viable for longer, then I might use him for longer. It will depend on a chapter-by-chapter basis, probably. But I can see a lot of Finn in this playthrough, for sure.
And I think that's the best part about negative growths, is you don't really have to be concerned about training up units for the next map. You can just kind of use whoever's good right now, you know, cross your fingers, you'll get something good for later. Because, like, you're not really in control of that, I can imagine.
No, usually it's the reverse. You're worried about using units because they will lose stats as you go along. They'll get worse. So you have to like bench them, which is, I mean, benching units itself isn't bad, but it's like, if you have a good unit like this guy, for example, it's like, should I use this guy right now because he will lose stats, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was about to say we gotta send him to go and get his axe, but like there's a soldier in the way. Gosh.
Opportunity cost.
No.
Do you like
Is
this
that
guy?
really what we do?
He
I love this. Come on, dude. Do you like Orson? What kind of a question is that? Of course I do. No, he's super awesome. I mean, we're about to see his personal weapon, and I'm sure there are like about as like many ways to pronounce the name as there are Fire Emblem players. Like, I don't know how to pronounce this. I don't know how to pronounce this axe. What do you call it?
Oh, I forgot what it's called in the latest patch. I think is it the Vogue now?
The Vogue?
Yeah, I think that's how it's spelled. We'll see it when we pick it up, I guess. Right now, he just has the good old Iron Axe, which gets the job done.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that one. Everyone knows how to pronounce that one. But
I know, right? So for the Uninitiated, Orson is super, super powerful because of the personal axe and also because Wrath. It's automatic counterattack whenever... automatic crit whenever he counterattacks, so if someone attacks him, they're probably dead. And I mean, not attacking him doesn't help either, because his player phase is also quite good when he gets his personal axe. But the automatic Wrath is like a big improvement from what Wrath is in other games. Like, it doesn't have to be on low HP or anything. He just needs to be fighting on enemy phase. That's something he does a lot anyway. So that, because of that personal axe that he has, and just the good stats in general, the E-rank axes you see here don't really matter all that much. He's 10 strikes away from D axes, which is enough to use the Brave Axe, which you also get in this chapter, because Thracia is just that generous, so you can use that too. And his stats are like, okay. His growths, fortunately for me, are not very good, which means that he might last a while. His base strength is kind of awful at 6, like for a fighter, you know, so there might be a point where he doesn't do a whole lot of damage anymore, but I do think I'll be using him a fair bit. I think he'll go through this weird kind of curve in negative growths where he starts off really powerful at his base stats, and he slowly declines because of his growths, and he'll get a big power spike because of promotion again, and then he'll start falling off again. And I'm wondering, you know, when he'll be, I think he'll be at his peak like right when he promotes, and I'm wondering how long that will keep up. But whenever I can get away with it, I will probably make use of him, because he makes life so very simple whenever I use him.
Oh yeah, anytime you deploy him, just take advantage of the Wrath. That's super good. I will say too, you mentioned the Brave Axe, because we have a new character here, and the other guy, and he's very kind. He fetches Orson's second PRF. And no, I mean, like, Halvin's a cool dude, I guess. He's the workhorse. He's the everyman. I feel like he's like if you or me went in here. Like, how would you do? Except I don't have 7 strength. I probably got like 1 or 2. I play too much Fire Emblem when I go to the gym. But you know, I do love Halvin. He gets the Brave Axe. It's not a PRF. I will say there are a lot of PRFs in this game. Like Finn's Brave Lance we talked about. That's actually a PRF. You can't just trade that off to anybody. Only Finn can use it. Light Brand is a PRF. The Vouge, which we're about to get, is also a PRF. So like there's a lot of PRFs in the game. Just pay attention to them.
Yeah. But like I said, Halvin doesn't really have any. He just gets an axe that anyone can use, and unfortunately for him, it's a really good axe that other people want as well. So probably won't be seeing a whole lot of Halvin this playthrough. Other when I have to take a kill with someone that's not, you know, Avel, I might just take it with Halvin because I don't have long-term plans for him. The main thing that makes Halvin stand out is Vantage, which, just like Wrath, is always in effect. So whenever an enemy fights Halvin on enemy phase, he just attacks first, which is good when he has the Brave Axe, because it usually means he just smites them before he ever gets damaged. So it can be situationally useful, but there's generally better applications of the Brave Axe than that. So I generally don't make use of this combo too much. There's other ways you can take advantage of it as well. And I find Halvin's stats generally aren't super great. Thracia is a game with quite a bit of combat, but the combat-heavy sections, they don't really work super well for Halvin. It's really tough to explain without context, but you'll see later on that I find that Halvin has trouble with the tougher parts of combat, and then the not-so-tough part he can do, but no better than anyone else, if that makes any sense. So he doesn't really specialize in any kind of enemy type or anything, and he's never really great at anything. He does have a really high chance to crit on his second attack, thanks to that little thing at the top right that says FCM. For him, that's a 4. Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, that's also an invisible stat normally that the patch visualizes. That means that your second attack has an X amount of times higher critical than normal. So, for example, Halvin normally would have, well, his crit says right there, it's 17. So the normal attack by Halvin is 17, but his follow-up attacks have 17 times 4, which is 68. So that's actually a really high crit rate for a generic dude with an Iron Axe. So you can imagine if you give him a Killer Axe, it would do quite a bit of damage. Unfortunately, there's not many axes that give high critical. Like the Killer Axe, I think there's only one somewhat easily obtainable Killer Axe, and that kind of cuts into that utility a little bit. But these kind of combos with high FCM work very well. It's another reason why Orson is so good. He has an FCM of 3, and there's other characters that have high FCM as well. Most people have like 1 or 0 or maybe 2. But characters with like up to 5, like 4 or 5, can have really good crit rates. And that's something that Halvin can't stand out in if he gets his hands on a high crit axe. So that's kind of what he's good for sometimes.
That's why we're gonna level them up and use them long term, right? No,
Okay. So I could talk about Avel, but before I do, I'll just do this real quick.
Just demonstrate.
Let me just show instead of telling for a second. This is Avel right here. This is Avel in a nutshell.
Didn't he have like 8 attack against her 7 defense or something?
Something like it, yeah. Avel good.
Wow, okay. Yeah, no, she kind of good, turns out. Level 12 Sword Master, okay.
Yeah, did you have to contend with Avel?
Oh, no, I mean, like, I know she scrolled on her skills real quick. I wonder if they have that. I mean, I know it's an option enabled here to show like hidden personal skills.
Oh yeah, I have that disabled. Yeah.
You have that disabled. Okay, so if you have it disabled, it won't bring it up. But if you want to bring it up, you totally can.
I'm not gonna bring it up.
Abel's super cool. Swordmaster pre-promote, and I mean, like, come on, dude. 20 speed. That's literally the cap. That's not her cap. That's the cap. Like, to be fair, it can go down in this one. You know, normally it just stays where it is, but I guess this time it can go down. Actually, does she have a speed growth?
Let's find out. I don't know right now. I can look at Oifi real quick. Let me see.
I was like, wait a minute, does she have a speed growth?
I actually would like to know that too. Yeah, she has 10% speed growth.
Oh, well, I mean...
She can get down to 12 speed if we get really lucky.
Yeah, well, goodness, I just looked at her growths. I mean, like, they're not much to write home about, but, I mean, this is clearly a basis of her growth unit, so... You know, she's level 12, man. Like, why are you going to be upset that a level 12 units and have the most amazing growths? Like, nah, just swing the Iron Blade.
Yeah. Let's go at it. I'm actually really happy that her growths are so awful because, you know, playing negative growths, we don't want units to level up very much. And something else I just demonstrated, probably not the thing you saw first, but she only gained 3 XP there because she's so over-leveled. So Avel is the perfect character for negative growths because, for one, her bases are really good. For 2, her growths are really bad. Her XP gain is very slow, and she also isn't around permanently. There's a huge portion of the game where she's not available, which means I can feed her kills as much as I want without feeling guilty about it. And that's very good because it means my other units get to stay at their highest possible stats for the portion of the game where she's not available. So I'm going to be gratefully using the stuff out of Avel for the entire early game as much as I can. There is one other unit that I want to use for a fair bit, but for the most part, it will be the Avel show, and I'm all here for it because I think Avel is awesome. I had an Iron Man playthrough once where I beat the entire game deathless and recruited everyone except for Avel. So that's why every Iron Man stream after that for Thracia became do it for Avel, because, you know, I was so sad I didn't actually manage to make her available again. But like I said, no spoilers. Also, it's a leadership star and some other mechanics that we'll probably go over at some point. But right now, I would like to actually play the game, so we should do that. Speaking of which, we could do the analysis now because we left Marty and Dagdar and Tanya for today. So, do you want to start with anyone in particular?
We might as well start with Marty. By the way, we left him for today because last chapter we got like 8 units, and here we're getting 1. So we figured we might as well split. Before I get into like what I think of Marty from my own experiences, can I make a guess as to why you were like training him up last episode? So like in negative growths, units their stats only go down, right?
Yeah.
Well, look at Marty, bro. He's got nowhere to go. Like,
it's like the forehead meme. He's like, can't you lose stats if you don't have him?
Ooh, forehead. We're actual genius out here. Wait, was I right, or was there like some other even bigger brain meaning that you had?
No, that's basically it. The idea that I had was that Marty, when he's already at 0 speed, for example, he can't lose any more speed. But funnily enough, I might as well add this now that you've asked. There was I don't know if it was a bug or a feature of the last version of this patch, where if a character has 0 in stats, but they would gain some in promo gains, and for example, Marty would level speed here, and he would promote, the game would remember that he lost speed, kind of like in the games with reclassing features, for example, and so he would gain less speed on promotion if he gained speed before, even though he didn't actually lose anything. You know what I mean? Like the game would remember his stat losses even though he's at 0, so he would basically be in speed depth if he gained a speed level up, for example. But that has been fixed / changed depending on whether you view it as a bug or not. Ultimage, the guy who made the patch, offered to change that, and so Marty's no longer hurt by this, which means that his promotion bonus will be paid in full to him regardless of his bad luck before promotion, which means his stats will actually be somewhat reasonable if we get him there.
It sounds good. I don't think I've ever gotten Marty to level 10, so I'll be ready to see what it looks like. That's about all I got. I mean, I guess I could talk about... You want to talk how Marty is in the normal game now?
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't really try to use him, then that's probably enough. Like, that says a lot, probably. Like, I mean, he's not very appealing looking, or stat-wise.
Come on, everyone's given him a go at least once, right? Like, At least once, but like, yeah, I mean, Brigand with 0 skill, 0 speed. He's funny. Like, if there's a unit you want to give a bajillion scrolls to and level them up and watch them get good stats, then yeah, usually Marty's the guy. Because, like, why not, right? Come on, it's Marty. I believe he's the first playable Brigand
Yes.
in the series.
Yeah.
Nice.
Unless you count, like, Daros, but he's a pirate, so no.
True. Yeah, that totally different class. Doesn't even count.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Cool dude.
Marty is, like, one of the most lopsided characters in the series, and those are usually the funniest when he has, like, zeros in certain stats, but, like, HP and Constitution in droves, that's when you know you got a very interesting character, to say the least. I wouldn't say he's great for, like, negative growth, but what I find appealing about him is his only good growth are HP and build, both of which he lost on his first level up. And then everything else is pretty trash. So, for example, strength growth is only 15%. So he's probably going to lose like 1 point of that somewhere along the way, maybe 2. But generally, he'll keep his 8 strength and get a promotion bonus of some kind. But then his promotions for skill and speed are like 6 or 5 each, if I recall. So that's actually like going to be halfway decent compared to the other options we have. So I have some faint hopes that Marty will be usable. And when I played this on the stream, I actually did promote Marty, but he had his speed cut a little bit, I think, by that bug I mentioned before, so that was kind of rough. So I'm hoping he's here for revenge. Normally, what I use Marty for in these games is if someone captures something, he can take it off of them and drop them like I demonstrated in Chapter 1. That's usually all he does, maybe like some funny kills here and there. The one redeeming factor about Marty that I can mention, he doesn't have any skills, but the one redeeming factor other than the high HP and build is that he has a D rank in Axis, and so he can use the Brave Axe. So if you want him to be, I wouldn't say good, but like okay at combat, he can double enemies with the Brave Axe, which of course is something anyone can do, but the fact that he can do it to redeem himself and make himself acceptable at combat is better than nothing. But generally, I mean, he's a meme for a reason. I mean, look at his face. He's just a good meme character.
One of the few front-facing units in all Fire Emblem, right?
Yeah. I
It's
guess
like, what,
so.
him, Lex, Yuri? I don't know who else.
I don't know if it really improved him, but hey, it works for me. Works for me. How about Tanya, right? Did you use Tanya or not? I'm curious. She seems like a character you'd like.
Wow, I mean, what do you mean a character I'd like? No, I mean, she's cool. I never used her. But like when she was free to deploy, I think I would deploy her. And then from time to time, I'd be like, okay, this is it. This is the run where I train Tanya. And then I get done with the Manster arc, and I'm like, oh, I got Tanya back? That's stupid. Let me like deploy my other unit. Let me like deploy Fergus and Asbel instead and whatnot. It seems like the cooler thing to do. Oh wait, but you got to go to a Gaiden to get her. That's right. Dang it. Oh, I mean, like she's pretty good in the Gaiden, I hear.
Yeah, she's interesting. Well, it's probably easier to talk about that part when we get to the Gaiden chapter. For now, like I said, Tanya's free to deploy, so there's no reason not to make use of the things she can do instead of focusing on the things that she cannot do, because there are some pros to using her, just like there's pros to using Rebecca and there's pros to using Naomi for the short terms that they're like available for free in like Walt and Dorothy and stuff. Even if it doesn't much, it's still a benefit to you, and then you still have the option to drop them off and not do anything with them all. And she's built similarly to Rebecca and Naomi too, like she's fast, low strength, so a bit fragile, but more of a dodge tank / glass cannon later on. But her growths are good enough to get through, and she gives some support bonuses to good characters like Orson and Dagdar. I believe she gives both a support bonus. I always get mixed up who supports who exactly, but I know she helps them out.
I know Tanya Dagdar is one way. I can't remember which way it is, but like she's his daughter, right?
Yeah, I believe it's Tanya supports Dagdar, but not vice versa, which is something this game can do. If that wasn't clear yet, yeah.
What a great dad.
Yeah, I know, right? Very nice of him. But Tanya does have a mutual support with Orson, so they make each other better, or Ocean, as I guess he's called in this patch. So it does help both of them. Mostly the character she's supporting, because Tanya generally doesn't fight a whole lot. She doesn't really have an enemy phase most of the time, so that sometimes doesn't end up mattering at all. But it can be beneficial sometimes if she's attacking over a wall or you're baiting an enemy at range. Like Lyn in the Bind Blade can do this very well, so Tanya sometimes can do it as well. And if you want to use her long term, you know, it's actually pretty fun to like scroll boost her, make her good. She's not terrible if you're into that kind of stuff. It just takes a while to get her there. But I've raised the Tanya before, and there's another archer in this chapter that I've raised as well with great results, so I wouldn't deprive anyone of it, but she's not a high-tiered character, if we would put it that way. For negative growth, this kind of character is awful because the whole idea of a character with bad bases and good growths kind of goes out the window when good growths are a bad thing, and then bad bases are still a bad thing. So it will be mostly for utility from Tanya, but in the Guidance chapter, she might be interesting. But we'll get into that when we get into that Guidance chapter, because without context, it's a bit strange. Now, that Guidance chapter does involve another character that I think everyone who has heard of Thracia is somewhat familiar with, and that's the great Dagdar. I'm gonna assume you definitely use this character. This is a character you like. I know that for a fact. This has to be a character you like.
Oh yeah. I mean, like it's Dagdar, man. He's got a cost. Big dude. He can use bows. Like he can use bows. That's always a plus in my mind. No, seriously, like super fun unit. It depends on whether or not I get the guide. In my last run, I failed to get the guidance, so I was like, fine, no Dagdar. But like, generally speaking, you should try to get the guide. And by the way, if you're playing Thracia for the first time, like, how do you feel about looking up guidance? I mean, I guess like it depends on the person playing it, but I wouldn't blame you if you were like looking up the guidance. Dagdar's guidance is a pretty good one to get.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mention this to you in the last episode, and I think I should, so I'm probably going to edit it into the first episode, in which case everyone else will have heard it except for you, and I'm very sorry for that. But I made a character guide for Thracia, or not a character guide, a first-timer guide, a spoiler-free guide for people who are playing the game for the first time, and they want to play it, but not so blindlisted will miss like recruitable characters and guidance, because how blind you want to play a game depends on your personal preferences, but I think the most common group of people, the biggest group of people, are those that want to play the game but not miss recruitable characters or playable chapters. And for that reason, I made a guide that lets you get all those things without spoiling anything else. So it's very vague in most of my descriptions, so that if you are at that point, you'll know what I mean. But if you're not at that point, it'll be very vague. And so you're still playing the game mostly blind. And the feedback for that guide has been pretty good. So I would recommend it if you want to get into this game again. Or if anyone wants to get into the game still, not convinced by my chapter 1 video. And for that purposes, if that's the way you like to play, then I would definitely recommend playing that way. And looking up guidance, I can totally understand it, because the game sometimes hints at them, but it never really states them outright, so it can be difficult to guess how to get into guidance.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, don't feel bad if you play through and you miss a recruitable character or you miss a guide. And I think my first Thracia playthrough I went through, I actually just completely missed the Dagdar guide and didn't even know that it existed. And then, because I was playing like super blind, like let me not look up anything. And then I decided to replay the game. It's like, oh crap, you get Dagdar? I'm like, oh, not bad. I thought it happened like way later or something. We talked a lot about the guide and not actually about Dagdar himself, but like you've had his stats up for a while and we've all been able to see them. These are pretty, like 14 strength, 10 defense, already good. And what's the best part about him in negative growth? He has really low growths, right?
Yeah, Dagdar has some of the worst growths in the history of the game. His only growths over 10% are HP and luck, at like 15% for HP and 30% luck. Everything else is 10 or below. And combined with his good bases, that makes him absolutely perfect for negative growth. So I've been minimizing my use of Dagdar in Chapter 1, and I will continue to do so. I will use him for some capturing in this chapter probably, and for the next couple chapters as well, where you have him. But I know from experience that Dagdar is probably the best character in the game for the long term, because he is more available than Aval is, and so I'm going to have to rely on him a lot at some point. You could think of him as like a carry until I get better pre-promotes, so you could think of him as like some kind of Jagan-like character, and these characters stay relevant for a long time in negative growths. And hopefully we won't get too many speed level ups, because speed is the one stat that Dagdar's really shaky on. He has enough to double attack the slower enemies, even some enemies you wouldn't really expect him to double, like mages. And then he has a cost, which it's kind of like FE4 a cost if you're familiar with it, but a bit more solid. And this one, it basically means if at the start of combat this is true, then he adds a round of combat. So if his speed is higher, if his attack speed I should say, if his attack speed is higher and if his HP is higher than the enemy, he adds an extra round of combat. That includes counterattacks, and it also includes whenever Dagdar gets attacked by an enemy, even if he doesn't counter. So enemies can just unexpectedly double Dagdar sometimes due to his own skill, but most of the time this benefits Dagdar because, I mean, if you look at the stats, if you get to use these twice in a round of combat, that's really, really good. And it kind of makes up for not doubling normally sometimes with the usual speed advantage of 4 or higher that is in place for most characters. So, for example, when he's using the Brave Axe that I gave him right now, he can attack like 8 times per round of combat, which is going to devastate everything. And because Dagdar is so bulky and so buff with his 15 con, he can capture almost anything, just like Finn. And for that reason, he's going to be useful for capturing some of these pirates. So I suggest we get into that and we'll show his powers instead of telling them.
That's right.
And I did mention that he has a support with Tanya, which I usually like to make use of here by moving Tanya in here. And then Dagdar can go in and go for a Brave Axe capture on this guy.
I have a feeling you've never made that move once in your life, Mekkah.
No, I've made it many, many times. Oh, right away you get the super cool warrior crit. Yeah, 6 XP. Thankfully, his XP gain is also really low, something I forgot to mention. He only has, he's level 8 promoted, so he doesn't gain a whole lot of XP. This guy, on the other hand, you recruit him by capturing him and then holding on to him for sure. And then you get him next map, which I may as well analyze him now because he's here. And this is a short episode. Next map is going to be a lot longer. So Lithis, I mean, these are his bases. They don't look very good, but he is a thief. So there's always value in that. Now, before I spout my I would call it an informed perspective, what were your impressions on Lithis when you used him?
So my first playthrough, I actually think I didn't get this guy. So I was like, man, chapter 4 is really rough. And then, you know, I went back and was like, okay, we get this guy. So I think I restarted the run and got this guy. No, he's pretty good. I think there was another run through where I trained him up and I promoted him and it was super cool as a thief fighter. His FCM 0 kind of holds him back, but you can just kind of treat it as if you're playing a different Fire Emblem game. And it's like, oh, I still have this guy who can like wield swords and has stats and whatnot. And like you said, he's a thief. So there are a lot of doors to open in Thracia. There's also a lot of chests to open because again, like enemies don't just drop their weapons. Every item you get is either from a capture, a chest, or from a village. So being able to use a lockpick to open up these things is actually quite nice. There's a couple other things that you could talk about with the steal command. That's pretty useful, like the ability to steal fire tomes. Is it fire tomes or thunder tomes that he can steal? I think it's fire.
I can actually steal both.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he's got that beefy 6-con. So the ability to like steal a tome and just completely disable a mage. And there's also another mechanic here that I kind of want to be able to show off. So why don't we go and capture Lithis? If you don't mind.
Sure thing. I'll just add, I think you did a pretty good job of covering Lithis. I'll just add my first time experience with Lithis was I abused the heck out of him with like save states and scroll abuse and everything. So my first impression of Lithis was, I wouldn't say inaccurate because it was my experience. Like, what are you going to do? Take it away from me. But it wasn't the typical experience for Lithis. Nowadays, I look at him as mostly utility unit rather than combat, but he does effectively have the ability to one-shot mages, which is very cool. So in that way, he's a good combat unit. And then we have a new unit that we should probably discuss before going forth, and that is Safi, as she's sometimes known, Staffy. Did you get a chance to play around with Safi?
Yeah, I did. And I mean, she's regarded to be kind of good, right? If I recall.
Yeah, kind of good.
Yeah, she's definitely very good. I mean, she has her personal hammer, and which is insane that you get it this early. Like it works the same way as it does in every other game. You use it on a weapon or a staff, and it just gets back all the uses. So like no surprises there. And yes, you do genuinely get 5 uses, and it is her PRF. Whether you use it on like warp staves or rescue staves or whatever you use it on, probably one of those two things. But kind of as you've alluded to before in earlier episodes, staff utility is simply like so amazingly good in Thracia that this unit, who's like really your only one with a decent staff rank for a long time, is just absolutely just nuts, insane. So yeah, definitely looking forward to see what you do with these staffs, because I've never actually seen you play Thracia into like a mid or late game situation. I usually catch your streams somewhere around like up to chapter 10.
There's probably more streams where I play up to chapter 10 than there are streams where I play after chapter 10, just by, the amount of runs I've finished and the amount of runs I've started. That number differs quite a bit. So that's probably why. Sure. Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to this series go that far, because, I mean, what's he get to? Is it A rank for warp or?
Yeah, it's A rank for warp. So she starts with C plus 40, so she's 10 away from B, and then you can either grind 50 more weapon XP on her to get from the B to A, and that's a cap, or you can promote her after she's hit B, and then she'll just hit A, because promoting gives you plus 50 weapon XP. So you can also promote her before, if that ever happens, but yeah. Just promotion plus 10 weapon XP will get her there, and this is definitely, like you said, by far the closest to A rank staff that you have. And that alone would be really good, and then a hammer is just, sugar on top, as some of them would say. And she can also attack after promotion, but before promotion she's kind of helpless. Like 14 HP, 0 defense is among the worst in the series, the entire franchise. And then in addition, We talked about this a little bit last episode. She's also vulnerable to being captured. So if an enemy sees Safi and they can attack her, they will also often choose to capture her, and that will take all her items. They won't take the hammer and staff, thankfully, because personal weapons do not get auto grabbed by an enemy.
Oh,
But
really?
everything else she has will be grabbed by them. So that's kind
That is
of
interesting.
yeah. It's kind of bad if you're not prepared for it. I'm usually prepared for it, but sometimes you're not. You're gonna get screwed over a bit. Another interesting aspect of Safi I want to highlight is that stabs can miss in Thracia. This is something that I think puts off a lot of people from even trying Thracia. I think it's overrated as an inconvenience for new beginning players, because beginning players will not play negative growths. They will play positive growths, which means eventually Safi will get enough skill to where missing with stabs will not be a thing. Right now with her base 6 skill, she actually has 84% chance to hit. The base hit is 60 and you get 1 more hit. Or actually get 4 more hit for every point of skill you have. So Safi right now, 84% chance to hit with a heal. That's pretty reliable. It's not super reliable. Like, the fact that she can miss at all is annoying. But she'll grow out of it quickly, because once she hits 10 skill, she has 100 hit. Not even 99, which is the normal cap for attacks hitting. It's actually like 100 hit with stabs. I've never seen stabs miss with 10 plus skill. But of course, we're playing negative growths, so her skill goes down rather than up. So she will miss more and more often. So I actually don't know if I want to like grind Safi up or not. I probably just want to promote her at 10. Like, just get her to 10 with as little level ups as possible, then promote her to get to staff rank, and then kind of go from there. The other thing that negative growths will like really heavily impact is my email, but also she will lose HP, which will come into play when we get fatigued. But all you need to know for now is the more HP you have, the less you get fatigued, and the less HP you have, the quicker you're going to be fatigued. And Safi's going to be heavily fatigued. Now, fatigue is mostly affects deployment, and right now we don't even have the prep screen, so we don't have to worry about it. But just as an advance warning, this will really heavily impact my staff users. They will get tired super quickly because they won't gain HP from leveling up. So that'll be tough. But for now, all you need to know is healer with personal hammer, and that will eventually get warp. 3 dudes today, well 4 if we count the dashing guy, and then next time we can get 3 more characters counting Aspel. That would be
I think that's fair.
My idea. Okay, so the easiest one to start with is probably Laura, because she's going to be showing off her skills today quite a lot. She's another thief, but you know, very different in nature from Lithis, wouldn't you say?
From Lithis? I mean, in the sense that like Lithis actually has some stats, and she doesn't really like. She's just a lockpick on a like unit who can move around, I guess. I do know, of course, she gets a bit of a class change later. So like I do know at least that about her. But I mean, I think a lot of the things that we said about thieves for Lithis are pretty much the same for Lara, right? Like, she can steal, she can capture bait, she can use a lockpick to open things up, and obviously all those things are incredibly important in Thracia. You probably shouldn't let Lara die ever. That said, as far as combat goes, like, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. You can see pretty much exactly what she's capable of, and you don't even have to do much addition or subtraction to figure out. Like, there's a lot of zeros here.
Yeah, I would say Lara is almost like Lithis taken to a further extreme. It's like even worse at his worst areas, and even, well, better, not really better at lockpicking or anything than Lithis is. She is worse at stealing because she cannot take any weapons lighter than her con, or she cannot take any weapons heavier than her con. There we go, that's the word I'm looking for. So she can't take tomes, she can't take iron swords like Lithis can after promotion, assuming no con level ups. So she's a little worse at stealing. She does have a movement star. Lithis has 2 movement stars, so that's a small difference, I guess. But that class change she gets later on will completely change the way that you play the game with her. So for now, she's just a thief, but she'll be much more important later on. I agree, never let her die. It's honestly kind of hard to get her killed because almost every enemy will try to capture her. So as long as they don't have 2 range, they will just go for an instant capture as long as she doesn't have a weapon equipped. I guess almost always make sure that Lara has no weapons and no items on her. Whenever she's in enemy range, she almost can't die because enemies will constantly flock towards that 3 build or that 3 con to try and capture her. So that's what I'm going to do with Lara, is make sure it doesn't happen. And in this case, I'm going to leave her out of range, so it's going to open this door with her. And then we're probably going to need some help with that, because if we leave her here to this soldier, that's going to end up in some suboptimal results. So to help her out, we got Brighton and Matcha. They're actually a couple. Do you have a preference on who to analyze first?
Let's go for Matcha.
Matcha. All right, Matcha it is. So is there a reason you chose Matcha?
To be honest, there wasn't. I think I just like, Myrmidon, let's go. Neuron's activated. I saw it. Let's scroll down to the skills too, because I always forget who has who. Okay, you have Wrath, or not Wrath, Vantage.
Close enough.
And that means the other person has Wrath. I do recall that, yes.
Yes.
So, of the people whom you get to, bust out Leaf with in the Mancer, oh my goodness, how do I English? Of the people you get in the Mancer arc, Matcha and Brighton, since you said they're a couple. I don't know if they're a couple in the lore.
They are.
Oh, that's kind
These
of cute.
two are. Yeah, they're the Wrath Vantage couple.
Oh, okay.
I just realized.
Yeah, and I guess so. Oh, they're like Orson and Halvin. Oh my goodness, that's adorable.
I know, right?
There's so many of them, yeah. But they're the only two with skills, at least for right now. I think we'll get a unit later with has skills.
Yeah.
But I mean, her having Vantage is pretty cool. These stats are actually pretty reasonable. I'm not gonna lie. Right, like she can double a lot of things. I don't really know exactly how much she can one round, and her low con means that she's losing a lot of speed from using a heavier weapon. But like, to be honest, I think if we actually line up her combat stats with someone, it'll be easier. But I know we're not going to attack a soldier this turn. I kind of know what move you're gonna make.
Yeah. Yeah, she might fight some. I generally find her strength is a little problematic when it comes to one-rounding things. She will often be relying on a critical hit, which is kind of what the Myrmidon archetype tries to do. Matcha has a FCM of 3, so reasonable amount of crit, but not to the point where we'd call it reliable unless you have a Killing Edge. Killing Edge has 30 crit, so that could shoot her up to 90 crit on the second hit, which is pretty good. But Killing Edges are kind of rare, and if you rely on them to one-round enemies, you're kind of limited in what you can do. And there's better candidates for that kind of combat as well, as we'll probably get into mostly the next chapter with Fergus. So usually yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was about to say, I think as far as her combat goes and her crits, yeah, FCM3 is like pretty unreliable, as you say, but she does have support with Brighton. So whether she gets the +10 crit or whether she's getting the +10 or giving the +10 crit to him.
Yeah, I need to double check real quick if she actually benefits from that support, because I know it's a one-way support actually, and I think she actually benefits Brighton, but not the other way around, which cuts into the reliability. Yeah, it's kind of weird for a couple to not have the two-way support, but there you have it. That's as much background as we get on their marriage, I guess. But yeah, that kind of hurts her. The other interesting thing about Match has, of course, Vantage, which I don't find particularly useful, because when you think about it, Vantage only really matters if one of both sides in combat is going to die, and probably matters most if both of them are going to die, which with Matcha's low strength is not very likely that she makes a difference in that regard. Maybe you have like a Brave Sword on her at some point, then she could kill enemies before they hit her, but generally the skill doesn't do much. Like maybe if you hit an enemy, and in an enemy phase you attack first, you kill them, that can come up sometimes, but I find it's pretty rare that Vantage is actually useful. It's even less worth noting than, for example, Halvin's Vantage, because at least he has an early Brave Axe, whereas Matcha is nowhere close to being able to use a B-rank Brave Sword. So that's kind of unfortunate. And then I will say there's one thing that I do not want Matcha for in a couple chapters in Chapter 5. Like one particular enemy that I think she'll be the only one able to take on, which is very weird when you look at my army now, but it'll make sense when we get there. So I'm hoping to be able to hold her back just for that purpose, because if she loses like the wrong stats, she might not be able to do it anymore, and I'll be in big trouble. But other than that, I don't think I'll be making a whole lot of use of Matcha. She's kind of like the unit that works really well if you just want to scroll stack someone and make him really good, or if you're just looking for a temporary unit. But almost everything else is kind of hard to justify using her over auto units. But if you like Matcha a lot, you can still get away with it very easily, because her start isn't terrible. It works out. It's fine. It's good enough for what we have going here, and she'll be very useful in this chapter. Also of note, she has 6 move indoors, which is kind of nice. When she promotes, she becomes a hero instead of a Swordmaster, like you would expect. Most other Myrmidons in this game promote to Swordmaster. She becomes a hero. I'd almost prefer Swordmaster, because Swordmaster is an extra point of movement. They have 7 instead of 6. In exchange, she gets axes, which in most other games would be much better. You get access to hand axes, and you get weapon triangle, but both of those things are kind of shitty in this game. I'd almost rather just stick to using swords, so I think it's questionable, but at least it makes her very unique. It gives her some cool unit feel, so that's kind of nice, I guess. But I've never gotten
give her the Brave Axe.
Yeah, that sense, but she gets E-rank axes, so it's still some training required, I think, to get to the D. So I don't know, it's all kind of almost there, but not quite for me with Matcha. But she's a cool temporary unit, and I enjoy the Master arc for enabling you to use more units. If you're not using them long term, you can try them out, and if they work out for you, that's all the better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of units in Thracia will have some unchangeable things like skills or FCM and whatnot that can make them more or less attractive to train up and scroll stack to a big extent. And I guess Match is one of them, but I think for right now, and especially in the context of this playthrough, her ball of stats is pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
So, like,
Works
but
out.
it's nothing. It's nothing amazing.
It's good enough. It's
it'll
all right.
do. It'll do for now.
Yeah. This is a man of more extremes, wouldn't you say? Good old Brighton.
Oh, good old Brighton. Wait, are these stats like just lower than Match's?
They're pretty bad. Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Wow. I didn't realize that, but
he does have.
Yeah, no wonder Match's stats look so good. Oh yeah, he's got that. So, so we do get Brighton the Axe Knight. However, we are in Manchester right now, so everyone's dismounted and using swords. That's kind of like what's going on right now. In case you're wondering, like, why is everyone running around with swords? Why don't they give us, some variety here? Whenever we get to an outdoor segment, we do get that variety, but for right now, we're just stuck inside using swords. Between the two of them, I kind of far prefer Brighton. Like, if I had to choose one between Matcha and Brighton, like, I'm definitely choosing him because Wrath is pretty good, as it turns out. Very reliable crits on any phase. He has the Steel Sword too. I guess they both have rank for Steel Sword, but he's actually able to crit people with it. It's kind of nice. So, yeah. I do sometimes use him after Manster a bit, just because, I don't know, like, I like Axe Knights, and I probably scroll stacked him a bunch. He's kind of funny. I do think FCM1 is, like, not really doing him any favors, but he has Wrath, so, like, Wrath is basically, like, FCM5, except it works on the other, so you switch the attacks. So, like, why do you care about low FCM on a unit? If he had FCM5 and no Wrath, people would be like, oh my goodness, he's amazing. But, instead of getting the crit on the second attack, he gets it on the first one, so.
Yeah, and I think that works out better for him than if he had FCM5, because his speed is kind of trash. It's only a 4 base, which is enough to double 0-AS enemies, but Thracia, it has that variance, right? So there are 0-AS enemies, but they're not everywhere. So you're gonna need some speed on him, which in a normal playthrough you can fix his speed pretty easily, but it does take some effort. So with Wrath, he's better off. But over-relying on Wrath for Brighton, I think, is a bit of a problem because, as I said, he doesn't double. So if he misses his Wrath attack, which can definitely happen, like, he only has 77 hit before enemy avoid right now, and Weapon Triangle could, like, deduct another 5 from that and make it even more reliable. So if he misses, he generally just doesn't kill anything. If he does hit, though, the enemy is just probably dead or crippled, so that's pretty good. And he's one of your bulkier units. Like, 5 defense doesn't look like much, but 28 HP is quite a bit. And defensively, he's better than most of the units you got right now. Like, he's better than Laura and Match in that regard, that's for sure, as long as he doesn't get doubled. I find him a little bit hard to use after Manster, but the cool thing with Axe units is you can always give him the Brave Axe, give him that kind of favoritism and make him good. Even Marty works that way, and Brighton is no different. His stats will get a little bit better when mounting because you get a slight bonus from getting on a horse in that way. So that can also help him a little bit, but just like Matcha, he's usually more of a temporary unit for me that's useful in the next, like, I would say 4 or 5 maps, and then after that, whether you field him is, like, depending on whether you like him and whether he's really worth it, but generally you'll have better units at that time. But again, Thracia switches it up a bit, kind of like Radiant Dawn, gives you a group of different units to work with, and if you want to keep using them, you can. If you don't want to, you can just bench him without feeling too guilty about it. He's a good temporary unit, and he can be a good regular unit if you want him to be, but it'll take some effort because he's a little bit underwhelming in the statistical areas that you want to be good in. But for now, he'll get the job done. Being mounted is definitely going to be helpful for him when we get outdoors, but the next couple chapters will all be indoors. But first, while we ruminate over that, let's talk about Dashin, right? So the lockpick is Laura's, but everything else is his own inventory. So this is big guy Dashin. He has more fans you would expect of a generic armor knight. So are you one of those?
Oh, am I one of those? I mean, it's pretty cool. I like him. I was like running around with him in the Devil Axe the other time. Because, I mean, spoiler alert, you get a Devil Axe. It didn't last very long.
The Devil Axe?
But no, he's a cool...
Yes.
Dashin, yeah. I tend to enjoy bringing the Brave Axe here, just because, like, I don't know, I kind of like Dawson. He's a cool dude, and, like, to be honest, I don't think he's the greatest unit in the game, and I'm not gonna go and prattle on about, oh my god, Armor Knight bad, his low movement, because I don't, like everyone in this arc has 5 movement, okay? Like, he's not really any different than, like, Brighton. Or, I think Karen also has 5 movement too, right?
Yeah, every dismounted person has 5 move.
I think the real story is not his stats right now, but actually the stats on the Battle Axe. So why don't we check that? Because for a lot of people, this is going to be his only weapon for a very long time. But it does have 10 crit. and actually quite a lot of might. So it's highly unreliable. It's pretty likely to miss. It's also pretty likely to crit, and it only has 20 uses. But like, I don't know. It's a pretty fun weapon. High weight, but does he actually get weighed down by it? I don't think so.
He's chunky.
No. Look at that, and not that matters. It can't double anything anyway. But for sure, definitely a fun unit. Just because again, the battle axe is like high crits. He can dish out some insane damage, but like 44 attack. Can anyone survive that? I don't think so.
Maybe there's an armor knight somewhere that can do it, but it will generally kill a lot of things. I will say Brighton does come with a steel axe you can give to him if you prefer to play it a bit more safely. And you can also theoretically obtain more axes, either by bringing them in from earlier chapters, like the Brave Axe, like you said, or by capturing an enemy armor knight. But that's pretty tough to capture because, they're going to have a lot of build and a lot of defense, so grabbing them with your low build units is going to be pretty tricky. If you're capturing someone, it's probably going to be with Dacian in his arc because he has the most con out of anybody. It's both a blessing and a curse because it will also make it hard to carry him around if you wanted to do that. It's pretty hard to participate in rescue chains with Dacian. But the upside is he can make those rescue chains happen because he can lift up almost anyone. He can rescue Brighton, who is otherwise a much chunky unit. So there's upsides and downsides to having high con in this part. His accuracy is really problematic with only 66 with this battle axe, and I do definitely recommend if you want to use Dacian here, the Brave Axe is a good thing to bring. I didn't bring it because I thought Dagdar might need it, so that's why I don't have it, but I'm half regretting it already because just looking at the 66-8 over here. The other problem with Dacian, of course, is just classic armor knight problems. The move, I don't really mind too much right now. It will get annoying later, but right now it doesn't matter that much. The magic being 0, it's kind of tragic. Speed being 2 means he just doesn't double anything. Luck 0 means unless he's a scroll, he's probably going to face crit from like mages and other things. That's kind of annoying. Skill is pretty low, but he's pretty tanky. He can take a lot of hits. Some enemies don't even want to attack him with 11 defense. So if you want to put like someone on the front lines that's not going to die, Dacian will probably be your guy. I've played this game so much that the higher durability of Dacian doesn't give me more options than other characters do. Like, for example, if it can have a more offensively oriented units survive combat and fight enemies, I'll probably use them instead because they'll kill the enemies, which can be more helpful than just having more bulk. But for beginning players, I definitely recommend hiding behind Dacian whenever it's convenient. Just be wary of mages, and you'll be fine. Another unit that's not that great long term, but short term, definitely recommend using for whatever he's useful for. Now we have left 2 people, semi-couple actually, Karen and Fergus. Again, any preferences for who we do first?
Let's do Fergus, because we'll make kind of like a unit sandwich this episode, right? Because I hear Fergus is kind of good.
Yeah, I've heard so
just
too.
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious because you mentioned last time, I think, that you were aware of the Fergus Karen support and his FCM as well. Is that something you utilized straight away when you used him, or is that something you found out later?
Pretty much. Once I found out about supports, then I did. I think when I first used him, I saw the FCM5 and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I didn't really think much of it or try and use the support or stick them together. I was just like, I think if anything, I saw Karen was a Pegasus Knight, and I was more into that. To be honest with you, but then once I found out FCM5 is pretty good, and if you can give him a support, it turns into 50 crit essentially. I really started to gravitate towards Fergus. Just definitely a strong unit overall. Give him any amount of plus crit, and he's practically guaranteed to follow up on the second attack. I do remember that critical rate on the very first attack is capped at 25%. So even if you have 30 crit, 40 crit, 50 crit, you'll have at most a 25% chance to crit on the first attack. Now, this is still usually fine because whatever, you take 2 attacks to go in, or you'll require 2 attacks to get your FCM anyway. It doesn't matter if you end up, you'll always take an attack. Oh no, what a tragedy. Just get used to it, because your second attack is always going to kill them. Especially if you have plus crit with the rapier, plus crit from a support. You should be pretty fine.
Yeah, it has great synergy with a lot of mechanics that work in Fergus's favor. The first one that comes to mind for me is the way the critical damage is calculated, where it doubles your attack rather than doing so after you've done your damage. So instead of damage times 3, it's attack times 2, which generally works for Fergus when he's fighting high defense enemies. So that kind of worked well. And like you said, any plus crit will work, and he has 2 really good options: the Karen support for plus 10 and the rapier right here for another 10 crit. So that can be a guaranteed crit almost right away. In fact, it can be right away. The drawback is, of course, that in order to make use of his high FCM, he needs to double, and 7 speed at base is decent, it's fine, But for us, it's not going to get any better. Like in normal playthroughs, you will probably double with Fergus for almost the entire game. There might be some things you miss, some faster enemies, or maybe you'll get a bit unlucky, but you'll probably double most of the things you fight, so this is not a huge problem. For me, it'll be a big problem. Any enemy that has 4 speed or more, I can never double with Fergus unless I boost his speed in some other ways, like a promotion or a stat booster. In fact, it could be argued that maybe I should brought the speed ring for him exclusively just so he doubles more things, because as I said before, enemy stats are very variable. They can be anywhere between like 2 and 5 or 2 and 7 at some points. So there might be some things I kind of double with Fergus that you would expect him to double, like armor knights or soldiers, or mages who probably double always. But that might be a problem for us, but it won't be for you if you're playing this game, and you should enjoy the heck out of Fergus because he is hella good. And this is not even his final form. He's dismounted right now. He'll be mounted when we go outdoors.
I was about to say, is the horse going to help him out with speed, or?
I think movement speed obviously is a great boon. You have like Super Canto in this game, and he'll get like 7 move, I think 8 maybe, I don't remember. There's a Vigor Star as well, which you can stack with that. And then he also keeps his weapon, unlike everyone else. Like Bragdon was forced to use swords, Karen's forced to use swords, Finn is forced to use swords indoors, but he just keeps using swords. So he can use his sword rank to his advantage and use like the Flame Sword at some point, Brave Sword, Armor Slayer, that's kind of stuff. It's kind of helpful to have that. But even with just the rapier, he's still really good. So even if he never gets weapon rank, he's still nice. Thankfully, I did play negative weapon rank, so I can still make some use of like higher rank swords with Fergus if I use him a lot. But of course, if I get him to high rank, he'll level down and become worse. So
it's true, right? I always forget to give Fergus credit for that. Is that, you know, during the Master arc in particular, which is like frankly a hard part of the game, right? Like he is able to use rapier, he is able to use flame sword, he is able to use all these high level swords and whatnot that you can use in order to go through. And I think, like, as we kind of discussed with earlier weapons and PRFs and whatnot, you probably should be using them. Like, just it gets you through Master, you'll be fine.
Absolutely. With Fergus, I find that if you don't play Chapter 4 the traditional way, like if you cheese it like I did, he's probably not going to have to rank for a flame sword, because that's B. And he starts at like C plus 30, so it takes like 10 rounds of combat and doubling to get enough weapon XP, because that's the only way he's getting weapon XP is just fighting things. If you don't fight things in Chapter 4, he's not going to have the flame sword here, and that's a huge help if you have it. I don't have it because I didn't fight enough in Chapter 4. But getting to B rank takes a while, but if you get it before Chapter 5, that can still be super helpful. So I would recommend that if you'd like Fergus to be good, or if you just want to have an easier time, to try and train Fergus in the couple chapters that you have. And even if you get it later, it's really fine too. But yeah, he's the only one besides Leaf who has a reasonable shot at using C and B rank swords, absolutely. I think Matcha, like, even though she's supposed to be a murder, I don't think she has like very high. Yeah, she's D plus 30 at base, so she's not getting there. So yeah, that's one of the great things about Fergus. Now, how about that Karen? So, I mean, we talked about the Fergus Karen support is mutual, so we know that part. But what I'm curious about is, there's like, I feel like there's 3 ways you could use Karen as a player. One would be, I'm not going to use her at all. B would be, I'm just going to use her for flying utility, and that's it. And C would be, I'm actually going to turn her into a good combat unit because combat flyers are good. And it sounded like you went with good flyer combat thing.
Yeah, I think so. When I first started Thracia, I knew enough about other Fire Emblem games to be like, flyer probably good. And I think I overestimated the usefulness of flyers in solving a lot of the objectives. So, and by the way, I have kind of a theory here, and I'm actually curious to hear like kind of what you think about it. And if you actually think it's total rubbish, like just let me know. Okay.
All right. I'm listening.
But I feel like flyers are a lot worse if you have a lot of escape objectives in the map, or at least one flyer is a lot worse if you have a lot of those. Because I was kind of used to, like, I was coming from FE6, I was coming from a lot of other GBA FEs, I was coming from Radiant Dawn and whatnot too, where Seize was a pretty common objective type. And in those, I was thinking, okay, well, we're going to have a lot of Seize maps. FE4 too, of course. I played a lot of FE4.
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, if I can get a unit who can bring my lord to the escape tile faster, then that'll be pretty good. But the issue is, Seize is basically how fast can your fastest unit get to the escape tile, whereas escape is how fast can your slowest unit get to the escape tile. And with a Pegasus Knight, you can fix one slow unit, but then you'll probably still have another. Like, there'll still be some more work to do. Yeah. So, like, even though Karen can help you to get one of your units to the escape tile more quickly, you'll still have some additional work to do. And, like, maybe that just means Karen has, like, additional carrying. I find, like, oftentimes by the time you're done carding your slow unit, you go back and then you cart your next slowest unit, but by then they actually might have just gotten to the escape point already. Like, Karen is not single-handedly getting everyone there on time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
find that to be the case.
I think this theory, it works to an extent, but how much it does depends on circumstance and how well it works out in a map in practice, and we'll definitely show that when we get outdoors with Karen. I think she's still very good in escape maps, for some of the reasons that you mentioned, like you can get your slows unit all caught up sometimes. Not always, because of the problem where if you were to carry your slows unit outdoors who is Delson, he'd weigh her down because his build is too high for her to carry, so she'd go from 8 move to 4. And she would be unable to help him escape, really. Like, it's faster if Delson just walks with his 5 move than if Karen carries him. So that way, it's not really helpful. But what I found with Karen is, because I alluded to this, like the 3 ways using her. One is just using her as a flying flunky, basically, and the other one is using her as a combat unit. I find flying flunky way more useful compared to the amount of effort it takes. Because as someone who doesn't really care about getting her to combat, but just getting her to side objectives, you're a lot more free with what you can do without also have to worry about getting XP, and can just feed that XP to other units instead. And there's a couple of outdoor maps where that's really useful to have someone who can like sidetrack and then come back around when everyone else is near the escape objective. So in a way, you don't use it to speed up other units, but you have her take the most complicated path to get all the side objectives, like all the villages in chapter, I want to say 7, with where you're escaping, like the first outdoor chapter. That one's, their flying is very good there. And there's a lot of maps like that where Karen can get villages and stuff like that, or even like player recruitments, character recruitments, all that stuff. That's really helpful to do for Karen, and everyone else can just kind of do their own thing while she's doing it. I find that generally very helpful. I've also tried to make her good with like combat, like giving her certain skills and scrolls and level ups, but I've never really found a combat flyer to be super great in this game. And even if you do find that great, there are better options for it than Karen in this game. One in particular, Dean, who joins a lot later. So that's kind of my take on the situation. So I don't think you're wrong in saying that she's worse than like games where Seize is a very common objective, because boy, flyers are really good there, and Karen can't even compare. But she's still super good for those objectives.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess like kind of the takeaway I'm getting from what you were saying is like in this game, it tends to be the case that you can either perform utility and side objectives, or you can perform combat, and it's very rare that you can perform both.
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah, I can't really think of a unit that can really do both very well. There's a couple. Dean would be one of them, but generally, yeah.
I'm especially thinking of the maps coming ahead, and honestly, it kind of feels like you're correct. Like a lot of times where I'm almost thinking that kind of dichotomy where I have my units who are performing combat, and then some other units who are performing utility roles. And yeah, it actually does seem pretty correct. Where a unit who's going out performing side objectives is like really hard to also do combat with.
Yeah, sometimes
like
these things are
the side objectives are so far out of the way.
Yeah, but sometimes it can be helpful to have a combat unit that, like a unit that does some objectives, sometimes need to fight a little bit, and in those cases, Karen doesn't do very well. But there's other units who can do that instead. Before we move on to the map, one quick, like I want to say tangent, but it's actually kind of important. We talked about Karen as if she can fly. You know, she's a Pegasus. We're indoors right now. She can't fly. She only has 5 move, and if you look at her stats, you already know what she's about: speed and luck, and that's about it. Not a very good combat unit right now, obviously, because she's forced to use swords like everyone else. But actually, something someone pointed out to me is Karen is actually kind of comparable to Matcha in some ways. I'm not sure if that goes for me, but I don't think Matcha's leveled up yet. So, real quick, Karen has 3 strength, 12 speed, and 4 con. Matcha has 1 more strength, but less speed, 12, and then like 2 more points of con. So they're somewhat comparable when they're fighting with swords, even though Karen gets weighed down more. It's kind of like the speed versus con kind of thing. So Karen's actually not terrible at combat. She does have really high magic at 7, whereas everyone else is like 1, 2, or even 0 points in that. So she's kind of okay at fighting mages. And she's good at doing capture bait and, of course, supporting Fergus. So even though right now she's nerfed without her Pegasus Rider, there are still uses for her. And I think actually you'll find that she's kind of useful in this first portion. Now, you mentioned that using a torch here. You might wonder, like, why not try with Nana for her weapon? I guess we should go over Nana before we completely forget to talk about her.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, she exists. She uses the Earth Sword, which is her personal weapon, so Avel can't use that. That's why we don't do it. But, I'm sure you found other uses for Nana than, like, standing here doing nothing, right? Raisins, like, she's some utility, right?
Well, I guess, like, in a way, sitting around doing nothing is, like, kind of the utility I found for her, because, like, she has this skill called Charm. There you go. Good timing. Like...
It's my job.
Yep. Emma's kind of good, this one I hear. Like, it's basically support that works for everybody. Sure, it doesn't give crit, but, like, the hit and avoid is also a really important part of the support, like, the support formula, too, you know? Don't be scoffing at Charm because it doesn't give crit. It's an incredibly good skill. In addition, I think she's the only person in the game to support Leaf. Unless Avel does it too, maybe.
To get back on the on that one, but yeah, if she's one of the few or one of the only, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So in any case, yeah, Nana supports Leaf, which I think in this run through would not be particularly relevant because this Leaf is he's losing stats really quick.
Oh right, he got a good level up too. I forgot.
True. She does also support Finn though, which is pretty noteworthy in my opinion. So, because Finn ends up being like a nice combat unit for the next few chapters. It's really good.
Yeah, true. And in addition to like all that supportive thing, she also just has the Earth Sword. She's the only one able to use it. It weighs her down a ton by like 9 points. So this doesn't count as a magical weapon. So she's weighed down by 5 right now, which is 1 AS. So very dangerous to actually leave her exposed. But at the same time, it's a very good weapon. It does Nosferatu, so it drains HP from the enemy. Combined with Wrath, super powerful. Even without Wrath, it has its like uses, of course. It makes her much more durable than her stats would suggest, because her stats, not that good. But everything else about her, that's just kind of the thing with Troubadours and Valkyries. Everything else about them is really good. She also heals your units, which is super nice. The big drawback for Nana, of course, when it comes to healing in this playthrough in particular, is that stabs can miss. And normally, that is over and done with when you hit 10 skill. We mentioned this on Safi's review. When you have 10 skill, you can no longer miss with stabs, but since the formula is 60 plus skill times 4, that means that right now she has 84 hit with stabs. I think this is the exact same as Safi as a base. So 60% chance to just not heal units, and when your units are like damaged, it's usually not great to, you know, miss the ability that makes them heal, because if they got damaged in the player phase combat, they can't exactly use a vulnerability to compensate, so it's going to be a bit tricky to plan around it, but at least Nana herself ups her reliability with Charm, so hopefully that will make up for it. Super useful unit all around, especially outdoors when she can use her mounts, but even indoors, no shame in bringing Nana for supportive abilities, because she makes everything more reliable and more durable. Super good unit.
Definitely think so. What's her starting staff rank, by the way? I'm just curious.
It's E. It's E30. It's not very good. She's not like a staff unit like Safi that just gets warp and like physic and stuff like that. She's more like just to heal people, generally.
I mean, that's still okay, but yeah, it's not amazing.
It's all right. It's nice.
Okay,
Man,
there he is.
Horses on houses. The only one. Hicks. He's right here.
This is the.
If you've used Hicks, you have more experience with him than I do, Raisins.
I think I was like, let me give this guy a go. You know, I mean, like, Mekkah, let's play a game. Find something nice to say about Hicks.
He's a cool dad.
That's true. He's a cool dad. All right, like gameplay wise, he's like got 2 FCM.
If you ask me, I would have said he had 1. He can Oko the boss of the next chapter.
Oh, true. Oh, give him that. Okay, there we go. There's some credit. No, I mean,
at like 40
he's
hit.
an axeman. Yeah. Oh, I got something good to say about Hicks right now. He can block this spot. He's in position.
There you go. That's a good one.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll just help you out real quick. There's not a whole lot else to be said about Hicks besides the fact that he's free here, and his base bulk is actually pretty good. He has 30 HP, which is a lot more than my characters have right now. And 8 defense, it might not seem like a lot, but it's still enough to take like a couple hits from most enemies, so that's okay. Really high build means he doesn't get weighed down by a lot of things. This weighs him down by 2, and this is like the heaviest weapon in the game, basically. So it's pretty beefy in that regard, but because the speed isn't too good, he's not going to double a whole lot, so that 2 FCM is not going to come into play a whole lot. Just a useful flunky cavalry that can like carry your units around a little bit, and maybe take some shots later on. There's like ballistas that you can like use to distract with him. That's kind of where it ends. He's not super great, but he's a cool dad. He doesn't have any skills like Brighton, but at this point his stats might be a little bit better, depending on whether you've trained Brighton or not. In my case, I've trained Brighton and that made him worse than Hicks, so that alone makes Hicks useful to me. But you know, Hicks is cool. He's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. I
do agree his starting inventory is a bit awkward. The poleaxe like being heavy. It's cool in the next map, of course, but it's also pretty heavy now. And what was the play? Like one left of him. Oh, you got it. Oh, rip.
Alright, never mind. You can keep it. I'll just use my poleaxe. You can't use that. I forgot about that. He has CX.
Wow. Oh, no.
That's awkward. And so, we have a unit analysis. Surprise, 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 surprise. It's Shiva. And I already sort of hinted at what I think Shiva's good at, but there are other things, you know, right? This guy crits a lot. This guy souls a lot. That's good, right?
Yeah, he FCM4s a lot.
Yeah, he's powerful. I like it. I think I liked him a lot more in my first playthrough than I liked him on my later playthroughs when I realized how little combat there actually is in Thracia. But when I first played him, I know I read a GameFAQs guide, that was like, Shiva's the best unit in the game. He's so good. He like crits always, and he has soul. Thracia's all about skills and everything, and he's so fast and he's good. Which is all still true. I just value it a little less now, but still a super powerful combat unit that you can use to kill enemies if you want to. And in my case, I don't have better options than him available right now. Like, I think he's legit my best combat unit in my whole army right now. Besides, like, maybe Finn, Dagdar when he comes back. Who else like even beats, right? Yeah.
I mean, I could see it. I could see it being the case. He can't really help against the boss coming up next map though. But like in the Gaiden, I think he could be useful.
Yeah.
Like 119 hit. Like just check out these stats in the top right, okay? And I know that like that's Killing Edge doing most of the work, but still counts, you know? Like, come on.
I actually think something I might make use of with Shiva is that his sword rank is B, which is high enough to use the Fire Sword. And now that Fergus is tapered off, his ability to use that might actually be helpful. He's not as good as Aethel is, sure. But if he like, for example, doesn't one round the next chapter's boss, but like almost kills him, I think I actually have a use for him in mind. And like, at the very least, indoors, he's pretty good. Sword classes get an extra point of movement over most classes, like dismounted things. Excited about. First one is Carrion over here, new unit recruitments. So boy, I think actually his name is Kellion now, because apparently Carrion is also synonymous for Decaying Corpse or something, if I recall.
It's synonymous for like buzzards and like scavenger birds and whatnot.
Oh, I see. I was gonna say, because in the context of like vanilla playthroughs, Carrion would be about the opposite of a Decaying Corpse, but I think it's very apt for negative growth for him to be called a Decaying Corpse looking at his bases and growths.
I was actually wrong. You were right about that one. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Do you think I'm also right about his utility in negative growths and his normal utility?
I mean, in negative growths, I think he would decay pretty quick. Is that if that's what you were going for?
Yes, that was what I was going for.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty apt name. Of course, in vanilla, you're absolutely right. These are actually really good base stats for a level 1 unit. Like, you know, other RPG games might look at them and be like, these are kind of trash. But I've seen like most stats are above 5, man. Like, that's kind of good, don't you think? You know, stack this man up with a few scrolls and use the FCM4, you should be good to go. He also does support with a lot of good units. I know, of course, Leaf gives him a support. Leaf gives everyone a support, I'm pretty sure. But there's also a kind of like company of units that he joins with later. And a couple of them are pretty good. And I think a few of them do support him as well. I'm going to look up his support list now.
Good idea. Because I think I do know he gets a support from Leaf, which helps it with that FCM. FCM is kind of like with Fergus, it gets him 40 extra crit on the second attack, which is actually pretty good. So that's like a good setup for a character to like crit a lot. Of course, he is using like lances and swords with low weapon ranks, so finding weapons to stack that crit with is not as easy as it is with, say, Fergus, but you can get there. The big issue with Kellion for me is those weapon ranks in like a vanilla context. There's a kind of an issue. It does have like an interesting class of Cavalier. Like most of the knights we've seen so far have been like Finn and Brighton and Fergus, where they have like one weapon and they kind of stuck with it, and he just kind of has two. But that's probably why they split his weapon XP up a bit like this, like 40 lances, 30 lances.
One Vigor Star.
Yeah, and one Vigor Star, which, I mean, those are always funny when you activate, but you never know when they're going to activate. So it's just like, it's a nice cherry on top, but it doesn't really carry a character very far. I do agree that these bases are good for a level 1 character. We're not really in Chapter 1 anymore, though, so he would have to be somewhat competent base to get going, which isn't always easy, but if you want Carrion to get going, he definitely can do so. It takes a couple level ups before he becomes really, really good, stat-wise. And then you lose some stats. He's like kind of a bad indoor unit, I think, because his move will go down to 1, or go down to 5, and that's not great. But he's perfectly serviceable if you wanted to be a bit patient and raise him. I just don't think he's a very efficient unit, but he's a very fun zero-to-hero kind of unit that I really enjoy using.
Oh yeah,
on an off
totally, day. Definitely the guy to scroll stack up. How do you feel like? How do you evaluate the whole ability to use 2 weapons things? Because I understand like weapon triangle is not that great in Thracia, but there are also some really cool utility weapons you can use. Like, yeah, sure, the Brave Lance isn't among them because he's not Finn. But like, is there any extra utility that he offers by being able to use both lances and swords, or is it just kind of like not really matter because he's just going to be using one or the other?
I would much rather he specialize in one weapon type and then have like, some kind of good personal weapon, if that makes sense, than him having like access to 2 types. Because like you said, the weapon triangle doesn't matter much and his ranks are low. So even though he can use both swords and lances, he cannot really feasibly use both good swords and lances. Like, he's never going to be able to use the Brave Sword for a long time, and if he is, that's probably because he's fully focusing on swords and never using lances, right? So he'll never be able to use, say, Killer Lance probably at the same time. And I've never tried giving him like really good weapons because it's such a pain to raise his weapon ranks. I find that Caerleon, once he's been raised, he's actually fine using almost any weapon because his crit is so good and his stats get so bungas with his insane growth that it doesn't really matter what you give him very much. He's just a good ball of stats at that point. And so it doesn't really matter what he's using as long as he's raised. Like, his stats are almost more important than everything else, I think. So I don't really care about it very much. Like, if you look at the Steel Lance, for example, right, this is a pretty shitty weapon. You don't really care if you can use this. And the same goes for most weapon types. So really, generally, Caerleon is fine. There's one sword that he gets later on, the Paragon Sword. It's not exclusively for him, but he can use it, and it's clearly intended to be something he uses. Because it's an E-rank sword that helps him solve his problem. It doubles his XP gain and increases his defense. But anyone can use it. That's why the sword is so good. That weapon is very, very good and very helpful if you want to raise Caerleon. But because anyone can use it, I don't really consider it a big pro of Caerleon himself. I guess it's good that he can use it while being mounted. Someone like Finn cannot do that, so I guess that's a nice plus.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, yeah. But in particular, I think lances are not very useful in Caerleon. I don't think I would ever use one. Like, the Steel Lance is going to the armory to be traded for door keys. I can tell you that much right now.
Right away.
And then these guys are actually super, super important for my strategy, but we could probably discuss their long-term prospects real quick. They're not super notable units, so I don't expect this to be super deep analysis. I think the most notable unit here is probably Selfina. Out of all these, the leader of the group. Good old Bow Knight. I think most people don't have a great impression of her, like a great first impression. I don't know what yours was, but that's the general vibe I get.
I was like, amazing unit, 10 out of 10.
Oh, okay, fair.
Yeah, she's super cool. To be fair, I did read online that she supported the whole rest of the slot.
Oh.
So that seems pretty cool, and I mean, like, having a killer bow straight away and the rank to use it is, like, pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's gotta count for something. I did look, and, like, I know that her stats, like, these bases are pretty good, and her growths are, like, not particularly impressive compared to the other guy next to her. Which is one thing. I looked at all these guys, like, oh, it's kind of cool. And I think it was, I put a lot of effort into training Robert the first time. So Selfina was just here to support Robert whenever, I was playing on the map.
That's funny.
But no, I mean, like, she's super good. Like, she supports the other knights. So if you're ever deploying them, you're like, oh, hey, look, free support pod. We'll take it, right? I think she's pretty good. She doesn't have any skills, does she?
She has a cost.
There you go. That's gonna count.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna have a cost on any unit that's not Dagdar, Bow Knights are a pretty good candidate because the big drawback of a cost is that you get extra rounds of combat, and one of the the downsides of that is that enemies will counter you more often. But when you're a Bow Knight, you don't often get countered, and as a result, you just get free shots at enemies, which is really nice. It's the same reason why it works so well in Madir in FE4, for example. Why it can sometimes be a drawback for, say, Noish in FE4.
Right.
But it turns out a cost can actually be a big drawback in this game for Bow Knights because, I mean, it doesn't just say whenever you attack. It's like whenever you see a round of combat and your HP and speed are higher than the enemy, another round of combat initiates. So let's say Selfina gets attacked by an enemy that's slower than her with less HP, she'll get doubled. So something like a Ballista, for example, can double her and just straight up one-round her, which can be very scary. And so you have to be very careful with her, but if you are very careful with her, you can get a lot of good like mileage out of her. But you have to be extremely careful with her range, because she can just die at any moment if you make like one miscalculation.
I mean, that Ballista would have to have like 11 or less HP, right?
Well, it's the same HP, or no, not same HP. Less HP than her. So she's 22. So if the Ballista has 20 HP, like she will get doubled.
Well, she gets attacked by the Ballista, and then if she gets hit, then she's at.
It checks at the start of combat, though.
Okay. Never mind at the start. Okay, makes sense.
So I've actually seen.
I'm always fuzzy on the cost rolls.
No, I think it's pretty elaborate here in the translation patch. Yeah, it doesn't say it, but I think it checks at the start of combat. That's the way it works for Dagdar at the very least. So I'm assuming it's the same for Selfina. So I've actually seen, or I've heard of someone who got around this problem by giving Selfina a really heavy bow so that she's not faster than the enemies and she gets attacked, which I found is very funny. Like, equipping a heavy weapon so you don't get doubled is like next level meta. Speaking of heavy, the killer bow does weigh her down by 4, which might be another part of like the negative first impression you might get from Selfina, which I think still exists, even though she has a lot of pros to her. Like this thing weighs 9 and she has 5 cons, so she gets weighed down by 4, only 6 speed. Still doubles a lot of the enemies, like all the enemies that are like about to come at us besides the Draco Knights, they have less speed than that, so she could probably double those. But at the same time, it also risks her like getting accosted. So be careful. You'll probably have a good time, but the next few maps actually have a couple ballistas that she's really scared of. So be scared. But you're right. She does support the rest of the squad, and we should probably look at the rest of the squad so we can see how big of a benefit that is.
Can we do Robert next?
Sure. Let's do Robert next.
It's
So you
talking
used
about
Robert. You trained him up then, right?
Yeah.
Probably
I saw
good
this
experience
guy.
then, right?
Yeah, a good experience. So this guy was like, yeah, this guy's super cool. Yeah, I had a good time. I mean, it was the arena, but it still counts.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
It's
no.
valid.
He's got a move star. He's got FCM3, and I think he has like decent growth. If I looked them up.
Yeah. All these units besides Sophina have great growth, actually.
Oh wait, really? They all do.
Yeah, I mean,
never used the other two.
not like Sarah level good, like 80s or 70s or 60s, but like pretty good, like 40s, 50s if I recall. In most
We're not
of the
talking like
stats.
FE6 Corel, but
Yeah, it's not Myrrh, it's not Faye, it's we're still playing Thracia, Raisins, calm down.
I know. It's like good growth. So you're telling me?
No, I used this guy. I trained him in the arena before as well. I did a playthrough where I trained literally everyone in the whole game. And Robert and these two friends of his that we're going to be introducing you to soon, I think they capped every single one of their stats except like magic. That they just capped everything else with some scrolls, sure, but still.
Yeah.
Pretty
Details.
Yeah. Of course, such a unit doesn't really fit into a long-term plan for negative growth very well. In fact, you'd say it's the opposite. They'll probably get worse over time. And their bases aren't great to really function as well as someone like Dagdar or even Asbel will probably be doing more in the end than these units. But for this chapter, at the very least, these units are very important, and I might deploy them as Kanto, like mounted flunkies, for the next couple chapters at least, so they can be somewhat useful. If they level up like a bunch of stats, that's unfortunate, they'll probably be benched. But as long as they're somewhat reasonably useful, I'll use them. I can't really count on a movement star to bail me out, but the strategy I have in mind actually can make use of Robert's movement star, his movement star, if things go a bit south. But we'll see how that unfolds when it does unfold. But it is part of my strategy that Robert can proc a movement star at some point. So I hope you're excited for that. These guys can probably cover in one fell swoop.
Let's do it all in one go.
Did you ever use any of them? Any of these?
I never have. I know that. I mean, like, first off, I'm not saying never have as in like they're a bad unit. It's just like never have as in I was never like particularly drawn.
No data to be found. Okay.
Yeah, no. I mean, it looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, they're like the Christmas calves of this game, I'd like to think. So they're kind of nice like that. But there isn't a whole lot to them that I can elaborate on besides the fact they have okay bases. A little underleveled maybe for this time, like level 2.
He has D rank swords, bro.
Yeah, and the other guy has the reverse weapon ranks, I believe. The other guy has like E swords, D lances. I do think the sword rank is a bit unfortunate, but you do get a really good sword in this chapter, the Paragon Sword, that you can use to raise these units if you want to. Robert doesn't have that option because he can't use swords, but these guys can use the sword to catch up, and Callion, who I feel it as well, can also use that mechanic. I recommend that if you think you want to train these guys. I know there are fans of Alba and Kane in there. They probably scored like almost dead last in Choose Your Legends, but that doesn't mean they're not cool. Like their portraits are pretty cool, so you might want to use them. But for this playthrough, they'll probably just be Cav flunkies. So this is Alba. I don't know if there's a better answer between what's better between D swords, E lances, or vice versa. But since he's so close to like D lances anyway, I don't think it matters a whole lot.
Yeah, it's like it's cool to look at, but the actual impact is probably like, come on, he's gonna get D lances by the end of this map. They're like playing it really slow anyway.
Yeah. So. I do think an important distinction to make between these guys and Callion, because they're kind of similar, is that these are lance knights like Finn, so they can only use lances when mounted and only swords when dismounted, whereas Callion can use both. And I think you asked me a couple episodes ago, like, which one do you use more, or is that significant? I don't think it really matters too much. You'll probably want to use swords indoors regardless of whether you could use lances or not. Outdoors, there's probably times where you want to use lances, but then you're mounted, so you're probably using a lance anyway. But I guess the fact that you cannot use the Paragon Sword when mounted is kind of a drawback. So that's Alba. I'll show off Kane real quick because, he also has a really cool portrait. His ranks are a little different.
That's a sick portrait, actually. I like that.
Yeah. They're pretty cool.
He doesn't have any sword rank. I know he's got a fun, like, art where he's got his glove in his mouth or something. His official art, I don't know, maybe this is where the editor puts it on the screen. But yeah, no, like everyone I know who likes Kane just like constantly references the art all the time.
Oh, okay.
But mostly because there's like nothing else to nothing else to go off of, like.
I'll see if I remember
what else
to
they
edit it in. It's your girl.
Anything but this.
It's your
Anything
girl.
but this. No.
It's your girl.
I disavow.
But she's cool. Look at her high stats.
She's cool.
And her weapon ranks. And
she's cool.
She's very cool.
I'm serious face. How is she though? What do you think of her?
What do I think of her?
Yeah.
I guess I can go first. So I think Owen's base stats are absolutely terrible for a promoted unit because Mage Knight is a promoted class, so it's not a great look. The Dem Magic is actually like decent enough to get 2 shots with most weapons, especially your personal weapon, the Dire Thunder. So in that respect, she does not really lose anything. But the bulk is so bad. She loses so much. She loses like hour speed from most of the tomes that you want to use anyway, like the Dire Thunder mostly. But like even Wind weighs it down to I think 8 or 7. That can sometimes not be enough. So her Void is not reliable, and then 24 HP and 3 defense is so bad. It's absolutely garbo. So it's really hard to keep her alive. Like she's not an enemy phase unit. But on player phase, she's a pretty good nuke. She's only a couple attacks away from bolting. Bolting is A rank, so she needs 20 attacks with her personal weapon, so that's easy to get. And then everything. The other ranks don't really matter. She has D, which is enough. Which is all you need for Wind, which is a good tome anyway. So it's pretty fine. So offense is pretty good. Accuracy can be a problem with Dire Thunder if she's like fighting an enemy on terrain or on a throne or I don't know, some other kind of avoid bonus. Pretty hard to hit sometimes, and that can be a problem when you're doing the Vantage Olwen strats. You get the Vantage Scroll next chapter if you do a really difficult side objective, an optional, really annoying side objective, but you can get Vantage in this game and give the Olwen. Because the idea is, I might as well show Dire Thunder here because it's basically part of Olwen.
I was about to say, let's put the tome on here real quick.
Yeah, so this is, I'm showing Fred's screen, but that's because he's coming with it. So it's a Brave tome with 1-2 range. On both phases it's Brave, so it will hit twice with 15 might before an enemy has a chance to attack if you have Vantage. So it's very, very good for that. Like I said, if you miss, you're probably dead because this will weigh her down to 0 speed. Unless she levels speed like 4 times, and then she's at 1 speed, which is not big improvement. So it's very easy to get caught up and die with Olwen, as I'm sure Raisins knows. So it's a very risky strategy, but
that
it's
was
also
one Iron Man Mekkah. That was a 1 Iron Man. Yeah, no, I do know she's losing a few stats because she's not mounted, right?
True.
But like it's not like earth-shattering the difference between mounted and unmounted Olwen, right?
No, not very big. I don't know them off the top of my head. They're definitely better when you're mounted, but honestly, it's fair to counter mounted stats because you probably want to deploy mounted units outdoors and, foot units indoors anyway. But yeah, I guess if their stats were better, she'd be better indoors, I guess.
She gets extra skill, speed, and defense, 1 point each, and strength, I guess, technically. Can she use swords?
Yeah, she can use swords. She can use killing edges, actually. She's better at using swords than most people, but only 4 strength at base, though. So it's kind of problematic.
We've seen worse, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
look at this bandit system we got.
On the bright side, her growths are really, really good, which, I mean, for me is bad, but for most players, I think will be really good. So you can give her like the Paragon Sword if you want to, or just give her Paragon straight up if you really like her, and just level her up a bunch, and she'll probably have really good stats in the mid to late game if you just train her up a lot. Like, her stats are not eternally this bad, but they do need some help, which I found a bit annoying because her XP gain as a promoted unit is not great. Most enemies in Thracia stay unpromoted until like near the end of the game. So it can be it takes a while to raise her up, but it's definitely doable.
I think so. I was always just kind of drawn to the Mage Knight, which I think is why I oftentimes like invested something like it. I'm glad you put another Vantage Scroll, because as long as you can hit things with it, like you do get kind of this pseudo unkillable monster who just attacks everything that tries to kill her first. But definitely, as you pointed out, there are huge drawbacks to just that kind of strategy overall. And I think she's like pretty representative of like technically she doesn't have Wrath, but she basically has Wrath because she doubles. Like, pretty representative of the weaknesses of Vantage Wrath strategies, which is that if you can't reliably get a unit up to the point where they're able to perform, like the Vantage Wrath, if you can't get Olwen up to the point or in a situation where she can definitely kill the guy she's fighting, then like it's a very shaky strat. Like, it's very shaky. But I think, like, again, if you train her up all the way, if you give her some stat boosters, if you give her some XP, then she kills things so reliably and so utterly that like there's no wonder she's a very popular unit, right? So
yeah, definitely. I think her presence in Heroes also helped a little bit with that. And,
that too.
There's one more thing I want to say about Olwen is that you can definitely improve her accuracy in some ways, not just skill rings, but something like the leaf support that she has. It's pretty nice in that regard. And I don't remember how her support with Fred works. I think it's one way in favor of Fred, so that might be why that doesn't help her very much. But Leaf is also going to get a weapon that's kind of good on him that will also boost the hit of near enemies. It gives him charm, so that's another 10 hit that she can often take advantage of, I think. So that can help her. Not sure if we can get her to 99 hit, which again still has a 1% chance of missing, and it doesn't save her against like enemies with long range like ballistas, but there are mitigating factors. You can make her fairly accurate, at least.
That's right. Well, let's put the Dire Thunder on her, and
Yeah.
I'm eager to take a look at Fred.
Yeah, sure thing. Also, last thing I want to say about Owen, she's really interesting. She's mutually exclusive with another character you can only get on one route of the game when you get a route split later. So that means I have an opportunity to use this character as much as I want, and then replace her with another character. And by replace, I mean kill off her. That's an option I have if I want to. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to take advantage of that, but I do know I already want this other character. So regardless, Owen not really a long-term unit for me, but she's still better than most of the other units. Like, she's way better than Asbel right now, so she'll probably see like use on the field whenever I do actually want to go into combat. So definitely.
Yeah, name me who is a long-term unit in this negative growth summary, guys. Come on, like.
Yeah. If your name is not Dagdar, you're not much of a combat unit so far. But there's one unit that I've really been looking forward to getting, and that is Fred. Can you imagine why?
Fred the Paladin. I mean, seems like Lightning Sword, good stats. He's a Paladin. Oh wait. Is it bad growths?
I
have no idea.
Growths are actually fairly good, I think. Not as good as old ones, I think, but still like pretty fine.
I don't think I've ever leveled this person up. I'm going to be honest with you.
That's fair. I think that's like an experience a lot of people have, because just like Olwen, he's pre-promoted, so he doesn't gain levels very fast. And I think people just kind of get bored just looking at Fred because he seems really generic. His portrait looks like it could be just a civilian or like a random NPC knight or somewhere. And his stats, they don't look very inspiring, right? They're not as good as someone like a scroll-trained character is. But if you compare it to my other units, that like I'm bringing Marty, Helvin, and Dalsin to a chapter as my not even combat units. I've been using a 0 magic Asbel for like half the game. I'm in dire need of some better combat units, and Fred is honestly, I think, next to Dagdar and maybe arguably Olwen, my best combat units, so I don't have any better options. Lightning Sword is not his personal weapon, but you know, he comes with it because he can use it. And he has A rank sword, which is really high, especially for someone in a class that you'd think would be focused on lances. But he can use things like Lightning Sword, Fire Sword, Paragon Sword even if you want him to, Killing Edge, Silver Sword. I could go on, but I'm running out of sword ideas, but he has a lot of good swords that he can use. I think of him as like a superior Shiv in some ways. Outdoor maps where movement is important, obviously he has the Paladin movement of 9, I believe. And even indoor maps, he can still use the high sword rank to his advantage to just fight like that, just like he did in this chapter. So, pretty versatile unit. He just doesn't have the best bases ever, but they're better than most of my units. And even in a vanilla playthrough, he'll probably be one of your better units. Like, if you have 8 deployment slots, you're probably not going to have 7 units better than him. You'll probably have some that you're still training up that are like on par with him, but outright better, I don't know. I think he's pretty good for this time, so I would always recommend using Fred as a temporary unit, even if you're kind of using long term.
Is it like the first of a pattern of units that we're going to encounter where it's like, you know, pre-promote with pretty good stats that we're probably just going to use until we get the next pre-promote, essentially? Like, I have a feeling that's the pattern that this playthrough is going to follow.
Yeah, I think that Fred fits that the best and a little better than a lot of the other units that we're going to get. But there are a lot of units like this in Thracia that just like function at base level, and at some point they might not anymore for you. We can bench them. He's like the least permanent of those, but when you think of units like Fred, Ralph, Glade, Dean, even to an extent, isn't fielded for every map ever probably. There's a lot of units like that will just go in and out of our rosters, I guess, is a good way to put it. Yeah, Fred is definitely the most one like that. Definitely.
Yeah, and to be sure, the Lightning Sword is not a PRF, right?
No, it's just a B rank sword.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's kind of his PRF, because like who else is going to use these really good swords besides Shiva, who doesn't end up having to do a whole lot so far. But so it might as well be. It's okay. It's a +5 skill score. It's alright. But I already have the Fire Sword, which is generally better, but sometimes the Thunder Sword comes in handy. Would you like to meet Marita?
Marita?
Yeah.
Holy crap, 13 speed. Bro.
I know, right? This is definitely a unit and a half. You know, I think honestly every playthrough, even if you don't use her, you gotta respect what she's got, right? Did you try her out when you first got her?
Oh yeah, for sure. I sent her left. Well, I think I sent her to the village first, but then I sent her left, right? Like, I mean, had her whoop some brigand butt. I mean, I think in a regular run through I saw this unit, I'm like, hey, it's a pretty good unit, I think I'll take it. And then here we are, negative growth, so we're like, holy crap, double digit stat? Like, whoa. stop. What are we ever gonna do? But yeah, no. I mean, she seems pretty good. Remind me, her sword is just a brave sword, or is it something else too?
High critical rates, gives Nihil, and then yeah, brave, or as it says here, ×2. And it's Merida only, of course, but you knew that.
Yeah, it's Spear. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that's what's giving her Nihil. I thought she just had it.
No, that's it.
Herself, apparently.
This is it, yeah.
Oh, she basically has it for herself, though.
Yeah,
like, come on.
Basically. I like how in this game it shows up in your skill list when you have it as your personal weapon equipped. I can't show it off, but if I were to equip like an iron sword, it would go away from here. And then she also has Luna, of course, which is right now it's 7% chance to negate defense. So the cool thing about Merida is that she's perfectly functional offensively at base. Her bulk is a little worse because, you know, 22 and 3 is like, it might be like on par with Olwen, who I ridiculously elaborately bashed her durability for, so I gotta be consistent and do the same for Merida, right? But Merida has a very low level of 2 as a Myrmidon, you know, unpromoted class. She grows very fast, and her growths are absolutely bonkers. I don't have them memorized, but I think her strength, skill, and speed are all in the 60s, if not 70s. So they're stupidly good, which is good news for if you're playing this game casually. It's bad news if you're me and you're playing this game. That means that Merida is like a really high base unit that falls off really, really fast when used a lot. So I plan to use her, maybe not carefully, but whenever it's convenient. I know there's things that base Merida can do that will be very helpful. And in fact, I know that Don used her in the final chapter at base level without even promoting her in 0% growth playthrough. She's that strong. Oh, wow. Her offense is like unparalleled good, especially long term with growth and everything, because that will fix her low base strength. And I mean, you saw Luna, you saw a brave sword that's like personal sword to her that doesn't even weigh her down by that much. It weighs like 1 and she can level con. She's very, very fast. You can get Astrolator as well if you're playing casually. So that's 2 like sword skills on top of her super high crit rate and her FCM of 5. She is offensively like second to none, except maybe like Aspel or something. She's insanely strong.
I feel like FCM 5 with your draw crits, like that's basically a Luna proc every single time. Like,
yeah,
really, crit usually has a stronger effect than Luna anyway.
Yes.
So like,
yeah, well, that's a good way to put it actually. Yeah, that's right. And even now, like her skill's only 7 right now, so Luna proc aren't even that likely. But since she has both crit and Luna, I think, yeah, she'll just murder everything.
Goodness, I guess let's talk about Parn and his 5 leadership stars.
All right. I'll show him off. Well, he doesn't have those anymore, thank you. But he does have 5 vigor stars though. That's pretty cool.
That's true. And like, what's that weapon he's holding?
That would be the Kingmaker. That's a pretty good weapon. That's probably the best sword in the game.
Yeah, best sword in the game, but like a lot. I mean, actually, like forget about Parn for a moment, because I know like if Parn joins the Kingmaker, it's pretty easy to associate that sword with Parn. But like, I feel like it's pretty common to just give that to Leaf and call it a day, right? Be like, all right, here you go. Like, yeah, the Kingmaker now. He's just giving charm out to everybody. But yeah, no, guys, Kingmaker pretty good. What are the actual like combat stats of the weapon too? Because I hear even that is like not too shabby.
What, the Kingmaker? Yeah, it's a brave sword, and it's C rank only, so like everyone can use it. It's super, super strong, and Parn can use it, Leaf can use it, any other sword user you have, like, I don't know, Fred can use it. It's pretty strong.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know what to say about it, except, oh, then I'll get wrecked.
Hello. How are you doing that, Fog? What about Parn, though? I think he's pretty strong. I don't think it's possible to not like Parn when you first get him, when you first play the game.
I mean, yeah, like, what does he have beyond, like, the leadership stars, I guess? Does he have, some additional kind of utility? I recruited Parn once, and I think it was on, like, an Iron Man, which swiftly lost a couple chapters later.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that one. I see some of the thief down there. Are you getting extra, isn't there, like, a thief down here who spawns, or a dancer who spawns, or something?
Yeah, that's very late in the chapter, though. I'm gonna do everything else first. Okay. While I'm chilling around here. Yeah, no,
for sure, but yeah, talk about Parn, because I recruited him once and I was like, oh, this unit's kind of good, and then Leaf died or something, so.
He has good growths, which is a problem, but he does have like insane utility. He can steal, he can obviously pick locks. There's not much lockpicking to be done actually in the game anymore, but he has a pretty good combat, especially with the Kingmaker, but even without it, he's pretty fine, because he can use like Blade of Other Swords, thanks to having these swords. You can go with him, I guess. He is fast. He has 5 pursuit critical, which is very good. So if he has the strength to like really put the hurt on them, he'll probably kill an enemy. Like he can probably kill an armor knight using that Kingmaker, for example. So that's
Wait, is there anything wrong with this guy then? Because it looks like his bases were super good too, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of only having 24 HP. That's about it. Everything else is pretty fine. I'm gonna grab Trude.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab Trude here. He joins either if you capture and hold on to him, like with Lithis and 2x, or if you talk to him with Parn. Now, because he's asleep, I can't talk to him. He doesn't sleep talk, so I'm just gonna have to hold on to him for the rest of the chapter with Marty or Dalson or something. That's why I deployed 2 units with high constitution. One of my first Iron Mans actually forgot to bring someone who could actually grab Marty and hold on to him, or grab Trude and hold on to him, so I ended up losing out on him. I think I had to kill him in the end after wasting a sleep staff on him, which is kind of unfortunate. But that's how you recruit him.
There we go, the second layer.
Exactly. You get the fortify staff over here. That one gets nicked by a thief if you're not careful. Good here. So that's pretty much Parn in a nutshell. Everything else he can do, I could talk about, but probably easier to show it. But like for one, he has more build than Lithis does, so that's more useful for stealing heavily your weapons. For one, he can steal warp staffs, which is pretty cool and useful later on.
I mean, okay, Mekkah, like there's got to be a catch because you're talking about him like, he's an okay unit. Like I'm looking at this guy. I mean, aside from the 24 HP, he looks like absolutely goated to the wall bonkers. What's the catch here? Is there one?
I can't really think of a big one. Like, obviously, you can't throw him into a bunch of enemies and expect him to live. Like, he does only have 24 HP, 5 defense, right? So even though he has soul, it's not reliable.
Soul advantage, and
it's only 8% soul, so you can't really rely on this guy to just not die somewhere randomly. That's like the one catch I can think of. I don't think I'm even gonna dance with Lara because like she'll just fatigue herself. Dancing also fatigues you. So I'm not gonna do that.
Even with like Vantage and a Brave Sword, I know like again the Kingmaker is on him. It doesn't have to be on him. But even with something like Vantage Brave Sword, although I guess range attacks exist.
Well, I said you could kill Armor Knights with their Kingmaker, but that's like with 4 attacks and some criticals in there. The first 2 attacks will not critical probably, and so he'll probably die if you try that stunt with him. Depending on what enemies you're up against, but like some enemies he will not counter, like I think like mages for example, you won't counter those, so that would also make that maneuver a little bit more interesting than that. So there are definitely ways that Parn can die, and in general you probably at this point, if you're playing vanilla, you're probably capable of having better, stronger units at combat than Parn, even though it's, for a character with you put no work into is pretty good. But you can definitely like go wrong. Like long range magic can kind of kill him. I think his luck is also somewhat. It's good enough to not get crit, I guess. Although you only have 5 critical points, so you can still get crit by like I don't know a bolting or something. So things can still go wrong when using Parn. He's not invincible. He's no god. He's just kind of good.
That makes sense. Okay.
And
I have to temper my expectations a bit clearly.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know. I just like Thief Fighter as a class is kind of cool.
it is really cool. The fact that he gets Vantage and like stealing for free is kind of bonkers. I really like him. What about Salem? How do you like him?
So, I mean, taking a look at his stats, I can't remember. This is like considered one of the better dark mages in the game, but I think mostly because of his staff utility more than anything, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, he's the only person in the game who can use dark magic at all, so by virtue he's the best. But even beyond that, I'm assuming you like I don't know, magic users or something. He's pretty good at that. He's pretty fun at that. But staff utility is the big thing. Yes. Base C staffs is like who else even has staff rank at this point, right? Asbel has D, just to give an idea. Safi had to get to A through quite some work.
if I said best dark mage in the game, I misspoke. I meant like series. Is what I've heard.
I see. Yeah, I thought it might be that too. I'm gonna keep you. I don't need to move most of these characters, but I do need to move Safi forward. Everyone else is kind of optional. Who has a chest key for me? I think Lithis one. Okay, I think.
With his staff rank, he can cast Sleep. He can cast Torch. Clearly, is there anything like else noteworthy he can cast? I know like Warp is kind of out of the question right now because that's A rank. But like, is there anything else you have him like planned for casting here, or is it just those two pretty much?
I think the key with the Salem is that he can cast some staves that both benefit you. For example, the Sleeping of Trude and then torching the map so you can see what's going on. Both of those are beneficial by themselves, but they also give him staff rank to eventually get to warp. I think that's the whole key to why Salem is so useful, because he can both help you and help himself at the same time, and then eventually get to A rank staves. And at this point, like when you're like, it doesn't really matter exactly when you hit A staves if you're not planning like super tightly. What turn are we on? But at some point, it's nice if Salem hits A rank staves and starts being able to use warp, rescue, rewarp, etc. And at that point, like there's a point in the game where that's all you need to be useful, and at that point you're just an automatic S2 unit by virtue of having all that. Find that thing. Oh, there it is. Hey,
Shoot. Oh. He's like, no, it's not here, you idiot.
Yeah, Salem is usually, I think, the second person to hit A-rank staffs for me in the game.
Second person. Okay, so you do end up getting there. Let me take a look. I want to see Laputu Mage. I'm looking at.
Yeah, he has. He can use wind as well. He's not forced to use Jormungandr. It's as I said before, it loses the ability to poison enemies when you are an enemy mage, but it loses that when you're a player mage. It's really heavy. It weighs 12, so the con doesn't count for mages. So he just has 0 AS with it for like until he gets +5 speed, which mine is never going to get. So he's generally better off using wind if he wants to actually double things, because wind only weighs, I think, 1 or 2, so he'll be able to double enemies with almost no speed. And he can do some combat here and there. His luck is really low, and I don't think he has any noteworthy supports that will like be around often enough, so you probably want to give him a scroll if you want to fight with him. I'm probably just going to save his fatigue. One thing that's nice about Salem is he has a bit more HP than most magic users. Like my Safi has a life ring and she has 18 HP. Salem comes with a base of 22, so he is much better off in that regard. It takes a bit longer to fatigue, and can he defend? Like with Safi's in enemy range, he's probably just going to be capture bait. Whereas if Salem is in enemy range, it's not necessarily a capture bait. There's actually some combat utility there to speak of that makes him more versatile in that way. But generally, I don't like to use him for that purpose because it still fatigues him, and he doesn't really need the XP. He just needs staff XP, generally speaking. Here.
For sure. And I do know he gains +1 staff rank on promo. So
yeah, he does. It's almost similar to Safi in that both of them like to hit B stabs and then promote to get A stabs. That's generally the routes to A stabs that they take. So another Master Seal will probably go to Salem at some point just to hit that little benchmark there. But
yeah, no, that makes sense.
It takes a bit of effort, and usually you want to expend something like a Torch Staff to make it happen. I'm not sure if I want to spam Torch here or not. I don't think I'll use Salem next chapter, so maybe it's just a good time to just spam Torch here and just hit the A stabs before, so I have 2 Warpers later on. I might just do that, honestly. I might just spam the Torch here, because I get Lenoan later in the Fog of War map. Maybe, if I play that map, I might skip that map, the 14X chapter, in which case there will be no Fog of War map for like the rest of the game, basically, until 24X, which I also might not play. But now I can see the benefits of Torch Staff right away, so maybe I'll just spam the Torch here and get it over with. I might just do that.
Yeah, even on 14X, you don't think you need it?
Yeah, you don't need it necessarily either. It's just, it's nice to say like 1 use maybe, but that's about it. Leaf comes here. Yeah, that's probably all there's like really to say about Salem as a unit. The rest is better off demonstrated, I think. I'll just spam the Torch Staff a little bit more. You can also miss it, so that would save some uses.
Save some uses and get more XP, right?
Definitely. With that said, let's grab Tina. Talk about her.
There we go. The Tina, they named a staff after an FE6, right? A different Tina, I know.
Yeah. I think that one is sometimes spelled Tiena, so that might be a different one. I don't know. But anyway, Tina, probably the most interesting unit in all of Fire Emblem, I think, or at least in Thracia. One of the most unique units in existence for sure. I don't know how to quite describe her. How would you describe Tina when you use her?
Similar to Parn, I've only unlocked the Gaiden once, and it was in an Iron Man. So,
right.
But I do know she has a reputation for being like very well liked, and a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, good, like gotta have Tina. And I tune into someone's Thracia stream, and they're in endgame, and Tina's like level 20 with a million things. And
yeah,
I'm like, this is pretty cool. Seems like a fun unit. So I'm curious then, like, what is it that makes her such a fan favorite? I saw 5 vigor swords, which is like pretty sick. But go on then.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe Tina in a new way, but I think the best way to describe Tina is like just fun RNG. Like she's the epitome of Kaga just want to make fun RNG kind of characters. Because what Tina's got is she's got 1 skill when using staves, and you've seen at the beginning of the chapter how annoying it can be to have a character with 2 skills. So you can imagine how 1 skill roughly stacks up there. She often misses with staves. She has 2 personal staves, the Thief Staff and the Unlock Staff, both of which are really good. You saw her try to use the Thief Staff at the beginning of the chapter, so you know what that does. It steals my stuff. Or now that I have Tina, I can steal their stuff. This works on any enemy as long as her magic is higher than theirs. She can take any weapon you want. So this doesn't just apply to like the weapon of a boss. It can be a ballista. She can steal enemy ballistas and we can sell them in a shop for something. You can steal enemy status staffs and use them against those same enemies if you want to. You can steal enemy tomes. You can steal anything you want really with the thief staff. It's super versatile. And then the unlock staff, which is still in our inventory, it just unlocks a chest somewhere on the map or a door if you want to. Anything that you can unlock with a lockpick, you can unlock with the unlock staff. I don't know a better way to phrase that. I'm sorry. So
and these ones, like other staffs, they have an unlimited range. You can just
yeah. Every staff in Thracia, I think that besides maybe the torch staff, I guess every staff in Thracia that has range, like physic, fortify, unlock, they all have infinite range. They can reach anything you want ever. So in that sense, Tina's low magic doesn't really hurt her in that regard. It does like make her heal less HP, I guess, and it makes it sometimes harder to target enemies that have higher magic, but we do have the Unsorceral Staff. Now, on that note, Tina has really good growths. Particularly, I think she has a 5% move growth, which is kind of scares me. Normally, if you play through Thracia, you'll find that Tina will level up move once or twice in her whole career, and then she'll probably get like plenty of other stats too. That's the reason why I don't want to use Tina throughout this game unless I really have to for a certain plan, because I think there's a couple enemies that even with the help of the Ensorcel Staff or a Pure Water, I think I still need her to have 3 or more magic to do the job. And this is also the reason why I'm hoarding magic rings like crazy, because I think Tina unlocks such huge potential that it's worth really hoarding her stats, as it were, her magic. Make sure it doesn't go down, because I'm pretty sure she has a 40 or 50% magic growth. I really need to hold that back, because there's a couple things I really want to be able to do late in the game that I think I won't be able to do if she just procs magic once or twice. So I think I'm only going to save Tina for when I really need to. Now, she doesn't instantly level up from just using a staff once, so there will still be times where I'll deploy her, but I'm going to be very careful about it. I'm going to make sure beforehand that I absolutely want to use her in a situation if I have no other choice. Like, for example, I know that I want to obtain a sleep sword at some point, and that's going to be definitely something Tina can do. No one else can do that for me, so I'll use her for that for sure. And I can think of one other occasion later on where I definitely want to use Tina. So I'll keep that in mind for the whole playthrough as I'm using Tina. But if you're playing vanilla, please go nuts with this character. She is so much fun to use. She's so hilarious. The greatest thing ever with Tina is that her personal stats give a bunch of weapon XP, and if she hits, that's great. You just got whatever you wanted out of that use. If she misses, doesn't consume a use, still gets the weapon XP out of it, and as a result, you can use her many, many times if she misses. So I actually like her low skill early on. At some point, she'll probably level skill enough to where it's not an issue, but early on, it's actually really funny to have her low skill just spam thief stabs. If she misses, big deal. She'll get more XP out of it.
She just prints the XP, yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I can't wait to demonstrate it. But it won't be in this chapter. So usually the idea is you can like guard the city with these guys. Honestly, Glade by himself, I guess we can talk about him a little bit before we get into the map itself. Glade by himself can actually defend this point quite well, because as you can see, he has plenty of bulk. He has 34 HP, 10 defense, and he's on a gate, which gives 10 defense. So combined, he'll have like 20 defense, which is enough to survive just about anything that comes at him. So if you want, Glade alone can do it. Of course, he'll use a bunch of Silver Lance uses on the way, but he'll do it. That's Glade for this chapter. Now, I will ask you, did you use Glade in combat, or did you just deploy him for his leadership star? Because he has that.
I've used Glade in combat before. I mean, I saw the stats. I was like, this is kind of good, but...
Okay. Did he hold up?
To be honest, he was pretty good. To be honest, I'd never even noticed that he had a leadership star.
Wow, okay. That's the opposite of most people's impression of Glade.
Yeah, I saw him. I was like, yo, hold on, this guy's got good stats, so I used him.
Yeah.
And, I mean, yeah, no, it held up. He's got, like, Silver Lance rank, so he can use whatever he wants. And, I don't know, he came out swinging. Like, look at these stats, man. Come on. How are you gonna... I'm actually, like, kind of confused here. Wait, really? Like, the impression is that his, like, combat stats are bad? He's just deploying for the leadership star?
I think for a lot of people that come at this point on their first or second playthrough or something, they see Glade and compare him to the units that they've raised with scrolls and everything, and he might look a little bit bleak compared to them, because a lot of growth units in this game at this point will be really good right now.
Yeah.
Like maybe some other leveled units, like, I don't know, Trude, Marita, who am I kidding, Marita, they will look really good. Oh, I forgot to talk about Trude. We can do it some other time, I guess, because, who cares about Trude? I forgot to bring him. Glade is just... His stats look fine, but they're not fantastic like someone else's. But they do hold up pretty well against the enemies that he faces for the most part, so he's good in combat. The one big drawback to Glade that I usually find is that while outdoors, he's pretty good. He's the same class as Finn. But indoors, he doesn't have lance axes, he only has e-swords, so he's pretty underwhelming there. He loses all that movement, he loses a couple stats. That's not as great, but there's still indoor maps where you on the field him just before the Authority Star. It's a free 3% hit and avoid for everyone on the map. You don't have to do anything with him. And he has the build to like hold on to people, capture them if you really need to, or like take them off someone else. Like if you capture a Dark Mage somewhere later on, he can take their items and then drop them off, kind of like the Marty utility. So he can do little things like that, but for the most part, he's about outdoor combat at leadership stars. So
I guess so. There are some drawbacks too, like this FCM1, I guess. Like, I don't really know like how much to value FCM1, or rather like devalue a unit based off of FCM1, but I guess it does like technically hold him back from being a ponage machine.
Yeah.
Like some other people will be. I think the other reason I deployed him was his supports with like the Lunster Knight boys.
Yeah. Does he give supports to them as well? I don't remember.
He does.
I know he has a 20 support with Sylphina, which is good for her especially. That's really nice.
I think he gets a 20 support from Sylphina, but he does give a 20, or he gives a 10 support to all of Sylphina, Kane, Alva, and Robert. So yes, we have Trude. Shall we do Trude first? We recruited him first.
Yeah, sure. He can go first. He can go first with Trude. So
well, it's also because it's simplest to say. I've never recruited this guy. I didn't even know he existed.
Yeah, that's why I think we left him off in 12x because we already had Tina and Pern to talk about. So we just kind of finished the chapter before we got him. Also, we put him to sleep, so we couldn't really check his stats out properly. But now we can. And
yeah, I mean, this seems good. Like I don't know. Yeah. Is there something funny about his growths, or like something hidden, or some? Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go.
Don't mind the scroll. That's just the plus 30 and plus 10 stuff that you see in there. His growths. Yeah. I personally don't really like him. I don't know about you.
Wait, really? Like, I obviously, so like, I need to remove myself from the context of negative growths for a moment, right? Because and just thinking about in the context of the normal playthrough. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything like super special to this guy, right? Like he could, it feels like he could be a generic Myrmidon, but the stats are still good enough that like I feel like I could make it work, you know?
Yeah, I mean they're definitely good enough to make it work. They're good enough, especially because his bases are pretty good. I'm gonna turn down the emulator a little bit because I saw tested earlier. It sounded fine. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit.
Again, guys, I wish I had something more in depth to say, but I only just learned a couple weeks ago that this guy even existed in the first place. But like, I mean, I've always heard the common saying, it's like, oh, it's Thracia, combat doesn't really matter. It's all about utility or staff use or whatnot. But so like, help me out here. Why exactly is that true? Because I look at a unit like this and I think like, wow, these are pretty passably good combat stats. I think this is a great unit. Is it like just because compared to Dagdar or compared to Dean, who we're going to talk about later, this guy's just like takes a sideline, or what? Yeah. Why is it that you don't really like this kind of unit?
So I think a lot of people might be like you, that they either just didn't recruit him or they just recruit him and bench him because he has competition of like some more flashier units of the same class that people are probably more inclined to use, like Shiva, who's been around for a while, Marita, who is a lot like him when it comes to like the skills, which we'll get into in a moment. So he's just not very flashy, which I think why a lot of people just pass up on this guy. And then for combat utility, I do think there's more carry. There's just like you have enough combat units to get by even without him. So even if he was super good at it, it would be a little bit of a extraneous kind of character. And then there's no Astra Lone Hour Soul, just kind of makes his kit look boring. I'll highlight a couple things about him that I think are exciting, not his growths. The Vigor Star is kind of funny, I guess, but I think Marita and Shiva both have one that doesn't really mean a whole lot for most people. B Swords is really high rank, actually. It allows him to use Silver Swords at base and Fire Sword as well, so if you're looking for that, that's good. He only has 0 magic though, so not as good with magic swords as some other units are, but still, they can get the job done sometimes. He has Nihil, which...
Okay, I was going to ask if that's from him or from the scroll.
Yeah, that's him. That's him personally. Because Nihil doesn't block crits, it blocks all other skills. So like Wrath, Adept, Miracle, everything like that, he just ignores it. And this is a very situationally useful skill that I think in 99% of the battles against generic enemies in this game, it's not going to matter at all. But there are a couple of enemies that are really annoying. Particularly Miracle is a huge thing to ignore in a very small amount of battles. And unfortunately for Trude, Marita gets the exact same skill from her personal sword. So even if you're in a situation, one of those very rare situations where you need Nihil, you have Marita available, and she's generally better at killing things because she has the Darkest Sword, or the Marita Sword you want to call it, and she has like Luna and higher FCM. Trude only has 1 FCM, whereas Marita has, I believe, 4 or 5, and that sword itself is just really good. So that's another bit of utility gone. And then for me, like, you'd think maybe for negative growths, Trude would be a bit better than Marita for that nihil aspect, because Marita has like really high growths and really low bases, which is the worst thing you can have for negative growth, whereas Trude has kind of poor growth, right, and kind of good bases. But unfortunately, the one battle where I think I really need nihil for, it's all the way in the final chapter. That enemy wanted kills Trude, and it's not like you can kill her before taking a counterattack. So even that gets stolen from him in the context where it would be most favorable for him. That said, I still found a use for him in this chapter that I'll show off in just a minute. But I generally end up not being very super excited about Trude. I know that I think Fire Emblem kind of likes Trude over Marita and occasionally tries to convince people that Trude is better. I don't remember if they still think that or not. But I think that's, if you're looking for a Trude fan, you can find one there. I mean, I'm sure the Trude fans exist. I haven't found many of them.
Well, I know who I'm doing my next Let's Play with. So no,
I mean, it's still Thracia. You can still scroll him up and make him really good. So it's just, exactly. I'm being a bit harsh on him, but it's just he's not spectacular, but he's still usable for combat in this game. Like, the enemies are not strong enough to warrant not using Trude.
It's funny you bring that up about Nihil, because I think that's kind of a common thread with a lot of the games that have Nihil, where it's like completely useless for 99% of the game.
Yeah.
But that 1% of the game is so, like, it's so backbreaking that it reminds me of Radiant Dawn in a way, where like the most important question going into endgame is like, all right, who's got your Nihil scroll?
Yeah, definitely.
Please,
yeah,
return them to the convoy, put them on the good people.
Yeah, but then for like someone like Nolan, like 99% of the game, Nihil is just something that flashes whenever he gets into battle. That's all it does, right?
Yeah, actually, I think Nihil for Nolan can proc exactly once, and it's in 162, because the boss there has cancel. And that's the only time it can proc.
It's really off topic, but maybe the mercenary battles, that could be another place where it matters. True. But yeah, that's it's so rare. It's so rare. Same as Trude. Like if you look at all these like enemies, like who's it really matter against? Like you could fight the boss because he has great shield or something, but then their stats are so high in general that it's not gonna make a difference. But that's really off topic. We'll get into that in a minute. How about Dean or Edda? You wanna have a preference on these? Which we do first?
Let's do Dean.
Dean. Okay, Dean.
Because I hear this guy's kind of good.
Yeah. This guy is kind of good. Did you use him?
I used him a bit. Like this was the furthest I got, and my most current playthrough is like 2 chapters behind. It's like it just turned Lara into a dancer. My current playthrough right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do remember this guy being kind of good. I mean, like just come on, guys, just look at his stats. Like first off, Draco Knight, good start. If you've been watching Mekkah's channel for a bit, I think you know that this class is good. But also other things too. I mean, like he's got FCM 3. Like, look at these stats. That's pretty nice. And also, something I only just noticed today when I was like refreshing myself on Dean and his stats on 1 hour is, doesn't he have A lances, A swords?
Yes.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Like,
yeah. He's
I feel like that's kind of like really good utility.
Yeah, he is all around really, really strong. Like if you put him in any other game, you look at these stats, they might look kind of mediocre, but for the context of Thracia, these are some really good bases. He is able to 1-shot KO every non-boss enemy on this map, for instance. Of course, he's hurt by the ballistas, but that's how it's just shown you can get rid of them, and then he'll have free reign. And the great thing about flyers is, well, they can go almost anywhere they want, including out of ballista range, and still contribute a lot. 9 move is a lot. Outdoors, Dean is just a monster. Like, he's not invincible. Like, you have to be a bit careful, especially around mages, because 2 magic is kind of low. He gets 2 shot by most dark mages. He's weak to any enemy with a bow, so you gotta be careful. But if you know where to put him, he can put a lot of work in. I guess it's more I'm trying to find like a reasonable other wyvern to compare him to, but I'm kind of having trouble finding one. But he's just good, just not invincible. He's like a Meeseeks for wyverns. I don't know what else to put for him.
Is he like a Percival in that sense, where like he's just coming as really good?
Yeah, but like Percival is like, I guess Percival might be a close comparison because Percival's also really good, but not invincible, right? But that's just because FE6 enemies are so ridiculous that even Percival's stats don't help. Like Percival's like 20s all around, right? So he's really strong, but enemies can still kill him because they carry around like killer lances and horse slayers and stuff like that. But it's a good comparison. Flying Percival, sure, we'll go with it. Especially because the weapon ranks, they match up well.
Oh yeah,
that's what makes him so good in indoor maps too. Because when you go indoors, you lose that 9 move that he has. It goes down to, I believe, 6 because he's promoted. He's a pre-promote. I don't think I made that clear yet. He's a pre-promoted Draco Knight. and so we get 6 move, but it keeps 8 swords, so we can use any sword in the game. There's no S rank, so we can use Sleep Sword is a big one that I might make him use, but of course the ones I mentioned for Trude, like Fire Sword, Silver Sword, Kingmaker, whatever you want, you can 1-shot kill the enemy with it, probably. It's really good. And then, 2 Figure Stars and, stats.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but yeah, they're kind of good. Remind me of the mechanics on dismounting again. So, you move and then you're able to dismount. If you're dismounted, can you mount and then move, or do you have to move and then mount?
I think you lose Kanto for that turn, basically. So it's not like Three Houses where it's super busted. You can't, mount him and then, Kanto out of there. You can't do that. But you do... I believe, at least. I need to refresh myself on this before I put my foot in my mouth, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is.
Sure.
But you can still dismount to, avoid arrow weakness for a turn if you really want to. That's something you can do. The last thing I want to bring up about Dean, it's not specifically about Dean, it's about the scroll that he's carrying. So this is the Dane scroll, which gives some interesting bonuses. It affects every good stat in the game. It's actually the best scroll in the game, I think, for normal playthroughs. More strength, less speed, plus 30% defense, which is great if you want to fix some defensive characters. But the kicker is plus 5% move. Now, Raisins, we have been very fortunate that we have not gotten a movement level up all game long, which is super fortunate. Last time I tried negative growths, I got 1 in 8x on Orson. He went down to 5 move, I think, which is very sad.
Ouch.
I've not won all game, but this is a scroll I want to avoid completely because, imagine you fight with Dean and then you get that 6% movement proc with that Dane scroll. You don't want that, so...
It's kind of a huge move growth, yeah?
Yeah, this is a scary scroll to carry around. So, either you really don't want to get crit, or this scroll is a mistake to have in your inventory for negative growths. But I look forward to having this one be passed around for people who do not level up.
Just put it in the convoy.
Yeah, I have a plan for it, don't worry. We'll put it on those plates where it will not see much use.
That's cool.
Okay, Edda. How about some Edda?
I think I got her one shot straight away.
Yeah. Okay, that sums it up. Okay, I'll just cover this one then, right? Okay, so when you see the bases on Edda, you might think Pegasus Knight, honestly, mid-game Pegasus Knight, because her strength and speed are almost even, which I guess for Drake Rider is not super uncommon, but her strength is lower than her speed, which is kind of concerning, and really high luck. I guess the magic is kind of low for Pegasus Knight. Anyway, it's an underleveled Draco Rider. She's okay. I think she's Dean's little sister, which explains why she's worse than him. She's unpromoted, and I think her growths are okay, or actually pretty good. 60% speed is pretty good. Everything else is
pretty good.
Kind of okay, I guess. Yeah, FCM is only 1, whereas Dean has 3. I don't think I emphasized enough how good FCM 3 is. That you crit 100% of the time with the Killer Lance, so you can guess that this one is not staying on Edda for this chapter. And then B Lance is surprisingly high for what you'd expect out of everything else. She can still use the Silver Lance and the Killer Lance that she has, which is pretty good. She does lose speed from a couple lances. This one weighs 10, so she goes down to -5 speed, which is 4 speed with the Killer Lance. So she doubles enemies that have no speed whatsoever, which are not very common with Thracia's randomization methods. That's not very good. You can still train her, but I generally find that by the time that Edda is good, you get to a bunch of indoor maps, and then you're forced with a less than stellar indoor unit, because she only has D swords. Still better than expected, I guess, but it's still D swords. It's not that great indoors, and that's not exactly spectacular, but she can contribute to every outdoor map that we have coming up. Come again?
Yeah, from what I've seen, a lot of the late game maps are all indoors, right? I know one particular late game map which is indoors, and then a lot more you're attacking a fort or there are outdoor segments, but it's mostly indoors.
Yeah, roughly speaking, this map, the guided map that comes after, if you go there, and then 15, 16, 17, they're all outdoors, so they're all great chapters for Edda to contribute, even if you don't train her. I don't like her in all those chapters. I would deploy her in all those chapters, because flying utility is really good. We've only had Karen so far, and every time we've gone outdoors, we've practically fielded Karen every time. So she's kind of like Karen in that regard. But then 18 is indoors, 19 is outdoors, but it's not very useful to do anything on a chapter. And then 20 is sort of outdoors, I guess, so there's also complications there. And then everything from there on is either very staff-oriented, which means the flying doesn't matter that much, or it's indoors. Everything from there on out. So everything between 20 and final, which is roughly 5 chapters, is going to be indoors, or she's not very relevant. So there's a time limit on how useful she can be, but when she's there and when she's good, she's pretty handy to have around, I guess. So she's fine, and she's fun to train to if you want to. It's fine. All right, we can do Homer now. My Nana is safe. We can do Homer now.
Yo, S-String.
S-String, yeah, another free S-String, another top of the ones that we bought, but there's more to Homer than S-Strings, right? Come on, you didn't just use him for his S-String, did you?
Oh no, first Paragon is light rank though. I kind of like light, you know. And look, he's a bard. That's the same class that Lewin was, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's the exact same class. Or it's meant to reflect the same class. Did you train him or not?
I didn't really like train him up a whole lot, but I mean, I thought it was kind of cool because light is definitely one of the good tomes in this game, if I recall. It's only 1 weight. I can see it. No, it's more than that. It's like 6 weight. I was subtracting it from the con.
Yeah. It's good.
Okay, never mind. But 20 crit though. Like, I don't know. This tome seems kind of good. I don't know if you just pass it over to Asbel, but I think this is one of those units. Like, oh, hold on. Can I anticipate what you're gonna say? I feel like you're gonna be like, this guy's cool, but by now you've already trained Asbel, so like.
There's some truth to that. It's funny that you bring it up because I was watching. I don't know if you saw this, but there's someone else doing that did a Thracia Iron Man triple S rank LTC.
Yeah.
And Lolo, I shouted her out on my community tab a while ago, and they actually said that exact same thing, where like they were relying heavily on Asbel and making sure he didn't die, like super heavily, and for that reason they didn't really need Homer. At one point they were considering training Homer, and they decided, you know what, actually we don't. It's more reliable to make Asbel super good than it is to train up a secondary sage just in case the first one dies, because in Iron Man you can't reset if they die.
That's right.
I think Homer in his own right, this is a good unit. The light tome that he comes with is a good tome. I think of it as like the only way you can attack with a promoted Safi and other promoted priests, so I usually don't put it on my sage. Like, Homer can use almost any kind of magic. Funny thing, he is E-Wind before promoting, and Wind tomes are D-rank, so you actually can't use those, but he can use Fire and Thunder, and I usually use those on him. But I think he's much more than the light tome. Paragon is very big. I don't like it because negative growth, but normally it's very, very good to get into level 10. And then he promotes the Sage, and it's a Kaga game, so Sages have a really good promotion bonus. You saw how good Asbel's were. He has roughly the same one, so a little bit better even, I think. 5 FCM, so you give him Thunder, he's going to crit like 50% of the time a second attack before regarding skill. His base's speed looks good until you realize he's being weighed down, and then everything else is like single digits besides luck, so that's not good. But he's very trainable. His growths are very, very good all around.
Oh my goodness,
especially skill and speed.
Insane.
I say all around, it's actually like a little bit lopsided, right? But magic is decent enough to where he can get somewhere. You have a lot of scrolls at this point, so stacking a bunch of them on him and just getting some safe kills from 2 range is very easy to do, especially with Lara support. You can ensorcel him for some more magic if you want to. You can risk drop him around because he's very light, so he's very easy to train. Turns out very strong combat-wise, especially offensively. Like, he's like a glass cannon. He doubles almost everything when he's trained. Yeah, he's pretty good. But it takes him a little bit while to get going. There's not much combat utility that he can do that no one else can. And he has no stats before promotion, and after promotion he's like E or D rank stats. So in that regard it's not very good. But he's a very fun growth unit to use. Like, sometimes people go like, oh my god, these old games, these Kaga games, they're for elitists only. I just want to see units go grr. But this is basically an awakening unit that you get when you factor in scrolls. So, you know, it's an awakening kid. That's basically what he is.
Well, I'm sorry I had you all wrong then. I thought you were just going to be like continuing to praise Asbel, but yeah, no, you had a lot to say. But like,
I do think Asbel's better, like, don't get me wrong, but you can use both if you want to. You see this? I don't think, is this the character you saw and you went, is this a promote?
For a moment there, I was like, is this? But no, I looked it up, I was like, okay, definitely not. Definitely not.
Okay.
Well, I had to look up the class, it promoted to Sage, and I was like, okay,
that can't be pre-promote, that's too good. You can't be pre-promote and promote to Sage. That's too strong, yeah.
I know, dude, imagine. A 3 promote? I wouldn't know.
Okay.
But yeah, no, this unit seems like, okay, another cleric. It's like some person's girlfriend, right? Or some person's fiance.
Yeah,
I think so.
I need to say this right. I think she's Arion's fiance, but she's also in a close relationship with Dean from our army. She gives him a 20% support, in fact, a mutual support.
Makes sense. So what like straight away jumps out to me though is this FCM5.
Yeah.
Like is that a thing?
I actually think it's one of the least relevant things about her, but it definitely jumps out. I agree with that, it jumps out, but I don't think it's mattered a whole lot for me when I play with her personally.
I mean, like, it's Thracia, so we know staff unit's good. It's just in this case, it's another staff unit like 3 with C rank staffs. I guess if you're really into that sort of thing, you could like train up another staff user, another 7 levels, and another 1 weapon rank and staves, and you have another person at A rank staves who can just kind of do it all.
Yeah, that would be the case for any regular unit. Unfortunately, no one is a unit that, if you have more knowledge about the game, if you've played it, then she's vastly different. It's really hard to analyze her without knowing like, exactly how she works, right? Because one thing you got to know about Lone is that she doesn't promote with a Master Seal. Instead, she has a story-based promotion that you can activate in a later chapter. The chapter is 21 or 22. 21, I'm pretty sure. So if this was a normal unit like that, I could level her to 10 and promote her, but I can't. She gets a story-based promotion instead, and so I can't promote her beforehand. Which made me really think, is it worth grinding this unit's staff rank up from C to B or A before promoting, or maybe getting her to B and then promoting her, like with Salem, and basically what I did with Safi as well when you think about it. I decided the most optimal way for me to use Lone, I think, is going to be not use her. Just don't until she promotes. And as she promotes, she'll promote to Sage. I don't remember her promotion bonuses, but because it's a Kaga game, I know they're going to be good. She'll probably get like plus 25 magic or something. And then I'll have a B rank staff user with actual acceptable magic. And the alternative is like I can get an A rank staff user with higher magic. But I was like, you know what? With like slightly higher magic, right? But she'll lose some magic along the way. And when you think about it, if you go to A rank magic, what kind of stats do you get that matter magic wise? Not a whole lot. Like you get warp, rewarp, rescue, but those don't need magic to work at all. So I'd rather have
completely agnostic.
Yeah. I'd rather have a unit with B rank staffs or C rank staffs with high-ish magic that can use, for example, sleep or silence, stuff like that. I think that would be way more valuable because I got Safi for the A rank staff tasks, and maybe I'll get it to A rank eventually. Just use enough good stats late game to just use rewarp and warp with her anyway. Maybe her magic will just grow down anyway along the way. We'll see how I'll go about that, but I'm pretty sure I like the deal of just getting a B rank staff user in chapter 21, and then maybe some utility C rank staffs along the way, but I don't want to use her a whole lot. Her growths are really good all around. I think you've taken a look at them already, but it's like, I know they're on screen, but they're not for me. So like good magic growth and good speed growth. So offensively she'll become pretty good if you use her in a normal playthrough. But for me, she'll just become out of the trash in combat if I just use her like that. So I can't do that. And if you look at her bases, like 16 HP, her defense, these might look familiar. Like this is what our auto stat uses and like Lara has had. I can't really use that for combat. Maybe magical combat, but in that case, she doesn't do enough damage. She does have a very interesting unpromoted class that she can use magic theoretically, mostly focused on B-like magic. Everything else is just E rank. It's enough for fire and thunder, enough for wind, so she can't use wind until she promotes. But really the stick out stat for me is just C rank staffs. That's good. That's all there is to it for me. So
that's right. So in a way, she is a pre-promote, just not right now.
Exactly. You were right all along, actually. You were right all along.
I knew it. My spidey senses were correct.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of normal playthrough, you presented this kind of trade-off where it's like you could use her now and trade her up and her stats would be lower, or you could just save her for later. Obviously, guys, it's only in the context of a negative growth playthrough, right? Like this whole thing about like getting a powerful staff user in chapter 21, I think you said it was.
Yeah.
If you're just playing casually, you can still do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
make use of her
and use her in the interim
for sure.
Yeah.
You have to deal with the fact that like you'll run lower on like utility stabs if you try to grind her up with that. Like if you spam this ensorcel right here, that'll get spent. Which in my case, I'm just gonna take advantage of it and hoard it. But usually she joins in 14x, which is a chapter I chose not to play, which is a Fog of warm up. So that's a good opportunity to spam torch with her and get some staff rank. The problem with it for me is that until she promotes, she's probably not gonna reach A rank stabs unless you grind her a lot. So it's generally a bit of high effort. I generally just find enough utility in B rank stabs before promoting to get there. And then the magic growth is nice though, because having a late game 20 magic user is really valuable if you can get it. I can't get it either way because negative growth, but in normal playthrough, yeah, I would definitely recommend getting some level ups on her before she promotes.
He's just a mercenary.
He's just a mercenary. He's a mercenary in his spare time. He just likes fighting a lot. It's also his hobby. You can see he has a lot of experience doing it. So is this guy you looked at and you said, damn, this is a pre-promote?
Yeah. I was like,
I see why.
Well, because I think like, all the sites I was looking at used different names for the classes. I was like, I couldn't remember this. Like I remembered Hero was a pre-promote because I promoted like Orson or Ocean into it.
Yeah.
But then like the site I was looking at said, I think Mercenary. I was like, I can't remember this.
Weird.
But yeah, no, this was I said earlier, it's just kind of like gonna get a string of passably good pre-promotes and basically kind of like use them or rotate through them as we go through the game. I feel like this is one such pre-promote, right? Like
definitely.
I mean, passably good stats. I don't want to say filler unit because that implies bad, but definitely a unit who, like, I mean, FCM1, if you scroll down, I think he didn't have any skills.
No.
Right? Like, just kind of a guy, and yeah, he's got good weapon ranks and whatnot. which like obviously is nothing to scoff at. Like, by the way, I'm saying all this, it sounds like I'm like really condemning Ralph. Like, please, if it's a filler unit, that means I'm gonna like them. But no, I mean, this guy looks really great, really attractive. Like, come on, look at this guy.
Yeah.
Super good unit.
Yeah, I'm glad you said just a guy, because that's basically Ralph's portrait in a nutshell. It's just a dude. It's just defensive village because he thinks it's the right thing to do. It's the most concise and most awesome backstory in this game, I think. Yeah, definitely filler in the most loving way I can call him a filler, because his stats are really good for the amount of effort I put into him, which is absolutely 0. 14 speed is a really good base stat. He might be my fastest unit, come to think of it right now, considering how everyone else has grown. Good enough bulk. 38 HP is really high. I actually checked a while ago, and I think he has more HP than a lot of characters that joined later than this, or like equivalent. And the strength is good. The weapon ranks are absolutely insane. I mentioned earlier that he was growing weapon rank because his actual base rank is C axes plus 40, so 10 away. And while he was an NPC, he used his hand axe so often that he's always at B axes. And you might think, well, that's still 1 rank away from A. The funny thing is there's no A rank axes in this game. The highest rank axe is the Master Axe, which is B. So if I just chuck 3 more hand axes with Ralph, he'll be able to use every axe and every sword in the game other than personal weapons, which I think is quite fantastic. Again, for a unit that I put 0 work into. And then A rank swords gives him all sorts of options. I went over them with Dean briefly, but basically Fire Sword, Sleep Sword, Brave Sword, anything else you could think of, he can use them. Some of them better than others, like sure, ranged magic sword's probably not that great with 1 magic, but everything else you can do is great. Much better than the Iron Blade and the Hand Axe imply. These weapons are kind of shitty, but when we give him some good weapons, he'll be highly useful in combat situations. Now, combat situations from here on out will be rarer and rarer, but they do occur, and when they do happen, Ralph is definitely the best of them to carry them out. 1 FCM is not great, but you can give him weapons that are strong enough to 2-shot most of the enemies that you'll be fighting, and in that case, it's not a huge issue. If you don't have to crit, you don't have to worry too much about your FCM. So overall, this is a stellar character, especially again, because you can just deploy him and use him. So if your strong units are fatigued, you can deploy him and he does fine. Not as good as like a scroll like boosted character, like I keep saying, but really good for no effort. So super glad to have him. Like I think he's like a tier above like Fred when it comes to just raw combat, for example. Fred and Glade are alright, but this guy is quite a bit faster, quite a bit bulkier, quite a bit stronger, I think.
You just deploy him and he works. And I will say too, like we mentioned 14 con as a disadvantage to being able to move him around and rescue.
Yeah.
But that does mean that for most situations, he's getting all 14 of his speed, right? Like,
yes.
I know we always talk about, oh, here's a unit with high speed and low con is getting weighed down, but sometimes he has high speed. This guy just always has high speed, apparently.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fortunately, AS thresholds are not that high in this game, so I don't think it'll occur a whole lot, but it's nice. Like, it's just another good thing about him. You can't praise this guy enough.
The Pegasus Knight is usually a safe bet. You've ever played some of the older games, you know that, so.
Oh, hello.
So,
yo, that's not the guy you want to attack. Ilios, no, what are you doing?
No,
what are you doing? What are you doing? Is he capturing
okay?
me?
Yeah, with 69 to hit, no less.
What the hell? Dagdar, no! What are you doing? No! Don't kill him! What?
Oh, Ilios!
He really went for it, jeez!
It's like, bet.
Okay.
So as the
what's your first impression?
Well, you know, as the soundtrack can probably clue you into right now, in case you're watching the unit compilation after the series is done. He comes at a cost. You have to kill off Olwen. So I think it's like most natural to directly compare him to Olwen, seeing as that's like the cost you have to pay to get this guy. But he seems like a really different unit. Like he's basically just a paladin. Like I feel like Mage Knight is like the Mage Knight who can also use swords if they want, and this guy feels like a paladin who also has tomes if he wants.
That's well said.
Like it's like obviously the stats are pretty good. Like I'm probably gonna say this about every pre-promote we get for the rest of the game, but like the stats are pretty good right out the gate. 40 HP is immense. I saw that, I'm like, what the heck? And then if we go down 3 leadership stars, that's like the reason I wanted Mekkah to recruit.
They're gone. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. You're gone.
Oh, I thought we were gonna get a massive swing where we like reduce enemy avoid by 9 and get 3 hit of our own.
I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry. We do not.
It just doesn't want to lead anymore. Come on, lazy bastard. Anyway. Yeah, also he's got Miracle and a Vigor Star, which it's actually pretty helpful in case you want to suicide him on enemy warriors. It's really nice.
Fucking
but,
videos.
Yeah, I will say one thing that leaps out to me here is FCM 0. So I feel like that might be a downside that you're going to bring up, because I know you don't like FCM 0, but maybe this guy's other positive aspects just heavily outweigh that Mekkah. So what do you think? What's your expert opinion?
I think Ilios on paper is a really, really powerful unit. I just like his stats all around. Particularly what stands out to me is his bulk. Just 40 HP is a lot, and 10 HP is quite good. I try not to attach the words for a class name, like for a mage or for a mage knight, because I don't really care about that stuff usually. But he's pretty bulky for someone who has 1 to range as well. He does get weighed down by both the weapons he has. The Master Sword weighs it by 15, so he's weighed down by 9. Thoron weighs him down by 9 as well, so speed gets cut down a little bit, but he still doubles most of the enemies you will find. And he has Innate Soul and Miracle. I try not to use Miracle because it implies I put him in range of an attack that can kill him. But Soul is pretty nice if you're just fighting 8 enemies that do 5 damage each. You can be pretty sure he's going to survive just based off Soul alone, because it's a scoop percent chance to just get all your health back usually. And then A rank Thunder is just good for using bolting that he's been plaguing us with, so a good replacement for Olwen in that regard. And he doesn't really need to use wind all that much, I find. Generally just swords and thunder ranks are fine, and he's pretty versatile in that regard. He does mostly just do combat and rescue drop shenanigans, which I have a lot of already, so I might not see as much use as a unit like this would suggest. But his negative growth, he's by far I think he has the best stats out of anyone I have right now, just like Ralph and maybe Dagdar, so by virtue of that he'll see some use. But generally, I think always he's just fine. His growths, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, wow. I believe he has the exact same growths as 2 other units. I think Xavier and 1 other person. I forgot who. Which is kind of weird. I think it might be Sed, actually. I'm not sure. Maybe Sias. One of those 2, I think.
Exact same.
Yeah, the exact same. They just copy-pasted it. I don't know why.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
How was I moved? I will say, you did mention that, Miracle, you don't like using it because it implies that you made some strategic error. It's I put him in range of a lethal attack.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way though, if you're doing something I don't think he can wield Nosferatu, but he can wield Soul. That's the next best thing. If you're doing some kind of soul tanking and expecting your unit to live through that way, is that what do you think? Is that a non-dubious use of the Miracle skill? To be all right, I have this plan for tanking that has some random chance to it, because Nos tanking usually has some random chance to it, and then this is the backup strat in case there's a combination.
It's the same
of
category, yeah. It's the same category. I think for Miracle, the thing is it only procs when you're about to die, whereas Soul can help you even if you're not about to die. So I think based on that alone, out of context, it looks a bit better in that regard.
Well, what I'm saying is the 2 things put together.
Yeah,
if your plan is to soul tank, then there's the chance that you miss a bunch of times, for example, or don't proc it.
Yeah, it can work like that. I mean, it's where's he at? It's luck times 3, right? Miracle. So he has 14 luck, so it's almost a 50-50 of just dodging there. So it's not
42.
It's not bad. Actually, because it's weird because he doesn't join here, so the context is completely unfitting. He joins in 3 chapters, 4 chapters or so. So it's really weird to talk about him here. But he's a paladin. He's good. I guess that's all I can say about him, really.
Looks like that. I mean, he probably does the same thing where once you recruit him, he loses all of his authority stars, but
Yeah, that is true. He does lose his authority stars. The bigger thing that Connemore loses when you recruit him is once you actually get him, I'm just going to talk about him anyway. Once you do get him, there's only a couple outdoor maps left, and they're not very combat heavy anyway. And then the indoor maps, he loses his lance rank because you don't have lances indoors as a paladin. So he's just based on swords, and he has a cost. And that's kind of it. It's not terrible. He has an extra point of movement over most characters because he has 10 move here. So we'd have I think 7 move indoors. He still has 1 authority star. He still has the 1 vigor star. You can use any sword you can think of. He's a really good version of Fred at that point in the game, basically. But the cost is a bit dangerous because if a dark mage attacks him and he has more speed and HP than the dark mage, he's gonna get doubled basically. And he doesn't have the master lance indoors, so no real way to counter them besides the fire sword, which he wouldn't use very well because he only has 3 magic. So Connemore definitely not great. You'll see his counterpart Imelda later again, and she's really much better than he is. But I wouldn't say Connemore's terrible. It's just he's outclassed and not very exciting. I just went first because I assuming you don't have experience with Connemore, right?
No, I did not. Although I was gonna say, you're talking about no more indoor maps. Use that lance rank. I was thinking, wait a minute, isn't Ilios kind of trash that? But nah, I forgot. He's got sword rank and tome rank. He's fine.
Yeah. All the others can't use lances anyway. He doesn't lose anything indoors besides, I think, some stats. So he's a different kind of beast. But the one thing I do like is Nihil, which I think I know a couple uses for. That's why I want it. It's not a big deal if we don't get it, but at the same time, if we kill Connemore here, we don't have to worry about these calves either, because they'll all retreat. And that's, I mean, their stats are actually like completely garbage, so it wouldn't be terrible to just kill them with Dagdar or something. I might do that.
And Nihil and Thracia is like Grading Dawn Nihil, where it just cancels like all the skills. Isn't like Genealogy Nihil?
Yeah.
Where, okay.
Alright. Shroof. He's here. Well, let me just sum this character up in one button input.
In one button press?
Yeah.
Yes, there you go.
There you go.
Found him.
What's
Yo,
your first
3 Vigor
impression,
Stars?
Raisins?
No, I'm kidding. No, I saw the A-rank stabs. I was going to be like, yo, 3 Vigor Stars. Wait, he's unpromoted with A-rank stabs. Life is so unfair, bro. Come on. Other people had to like build it up and then get promoted. We were at like C. Like, oh my god, we got to spam stabs. All right, so yeah, this guy's ready to go. Cool.
Next.
Next. I mean, like, I guess if you want to do... Okay, so, like, I think we're being a bit reductive. We're oversimplifying it. You know, he's just a guy with A-rank stabs. Is it possible he's ever anything more than that, Mekkah?
No.
Okay. What?
Well, he has 11
Okay,
magic.
like-
That's like good for this playthrough, right? That's pretty good.
Yeah, okay, true.
Like
But,
everyone else is like, everyone with A stabs is like hurting their magic big time. Like Safi has like 0 magic at this point, I think. And if Dina ever gets her, she'll have 0 magic, I think. Salem, I think, still has like 6 or 7 left probably at this point. Usually you've trained at this point in regular playthroughs, they would have like 20 magic at this point, maybe 15 or something, but higher than him. For me, 11 magic is like, it's pretty good. It reaches 18 with the Ensorcel, gives me some statusing options that I normally wouldn't have.
Yeah, like, I guess in the
yeah.
context of this playthrough, yeah, he's not going to be much more because we want to keep this 11 magic. But I guess in casual play, I mean, like, he can promote. Is there anything cool with that, or just be like, nah, forget about it, bro?
I have some funny memories of promoted Shroof. I know that if you promote him, you can rescue Leaf, depending on build level ups. I know Donlan did that, and then, funnily enough, the one thing I want to say about Shroof that's really important to me is that he has 12 skills, so he can't miss with stabs like everyone else can. So he's literally has perfect hit with them, all of them. That's really good.
That would be very welcome after, like, Tina missing 5 times in a row.
Yeah, at the very least. I don't know how long this will keep up, because his growths are actually pretty good. He has 75% steel growth, so it's not going to last forever. But it's, you know, he's going to stay at like higher than 10 for a while, unless we get really unlucky, I guess. And like we use him a lot. So, I don't know. I think he'll be good, and then as the game goes on, he'll be slightly less good, but still one of the better staff users we have. Just based on like the combination of skill, magic, and staff rank is just better than anyone else we've got right now. So
Yeah,
in that
by a
sense,
lot.
he's like one of the best units we have, just by virtue of utility. There's a point in the game where the game becomes very, very staff dominated. Like if you thought it was staff dominated so far, just wait until the end of the game. So
Oh, yeah, no,
at that
we ain't
point,
seen nothing
Shroof-
yet.
Yeah. I probably won't be able to like trivialize it as badly as normal playthroughs can, just because of everything else that's happened, and like negative growths just kind of puts a wrench in that plan. But you will see a lot of Shroof at some point in the game. I will try to hoard him a little bit if I can.
I know. All right, what's your staff rank?
All right, is this all the information you need?
Oh, okay, 5 vigor. Whoa. Okay,
All right,
there we go.
first
There we go.
impressions.
I don't know. Paragon, Paragon in the context of this, I guess it helps trigger to level 10 faster. But look at that, dude. Wrath and 5 vigor stars. I have a feeling this is another unit you like because she's fun. I have a feeling. So, well,
Absolutely.
FCM 0, I guess, is kind of a buzzkill, but you know, I mean,
Mhm.
whatever, just get over it.
Well, she doesn't
Like-
crit on the second attack, but she'll crit on the first attack on enemy phase with Wrath if you're ever doing enemy phase combat. So
She has FCM -5. Other people, she has like anti follow-up crit.
Sarah can crit a lot. It's just usually I just use her for staff utility, and I think that will be what she will use for this run. I think this might be my best staff user, because she's gonna reach A rank stats the moment she promotes, which is in 3 levels, Paragon levels at that. And she'll get 6 magic from promotion, so that's 17 magic before ensorcel options. So one of the few units who can actually reach over 20 magic. So she's the only one who can like staff like highly defensive targets like that. So super important unit. Really good growth, unfortunately, so that magic will go down a little bit. But I think even with 3 magic reductions, with like I think she has 60 or 70% growth, 80%, excuse me.
Have
Yeah.
that scroll too, like the Nair scroll.
Yeah, that might work for
That
her.
reduces magic growth.
She can get the aim 1 build that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna have a lot of magic and A rank stats, and Sleuth has slightly more magic right now, but if you promote him or her, it will change a little bit. Oh god, I just can't emphasize how important Sarah is and how fun she is to use too, because 5 movement stars is 25% just to just move again, which, you know, there's a reality where she can go rewarp somewhere in and then get a movement star and like attack if you wanted her to. Like stuff like that is just absolutely crazy and fun. And
I've definitely never seen some, streamers trying to rig one of those before. That's for sure.
It's fun because like a lot of my staff users can miss because their skill is so garbo, and then Sarah kind of makes up for that by having a 25% chance to be able to try again. So if there's like a map where I have to do like 4 warps and a rescue or something, I can definitely think of at least one off the top of my head. Sarah can cover that, and that's really, really powerful. So if you forget about recruiting her, which is very easy because you can join that church, you're going to regret it because she's really, really good in any kind of playthrough. She's super nice to have and super fun as well. Like always use this unit. You'll never regret it. She's so funny. I could say more, but I think she'll be on screen plenty of times during the playthrough. So anything I forgot, we'll be able to mention there.
We can just demonstrate.
Yes.
Yeah, but he still has 3 stars. Let's go.
But he's still with Leonce's army instead of Leaf's army, I think. So that means you don't get his authority star, which is a dummy bug that was in the original. It's not a patch fault. This is this game's fault. So that's why I'm going to go with the save where we actually get him and then he changes properly. Again, shout outs to Miasis for telling me all this stuff.
1 authority star, there we go.
Yes. And
all
now,
right, let's see Xavier.
Let's talk. Xavier. So I guess the first question I will ask you is, you see this guy. Is he worth the trouble, do you think?
I mean, like, okay, I'm going to be honest. I think if you're the kind of person who would go through this kind of recruitment, you don't really care about what unit you get at the end, Like, you're just fine to get a unit.
Yeah, you'd be fine with Carl, right?
Yeah. Like, if you're the kind of person who's cool with putting up with, like, terrible or really obscure or hard to do recruitments, like, the fact that you get any unit at all is part of your own reward. That said, I kind of like this guy. I know, obviously, you've probably said it before, like, there's not much need for combat, or this or that or the other, or, like, Thracia at this point is more about stabs or utility that you can provide. But to be honest, I think, like, being a guy with 17 defense is actually going to be a decent bit of utility probably on its own right. Like, there have been plenty of times where we needed to choke a point. We just had Dagdar sitting there in front of guys. I know that this was sort of a special case. But with my completely uninformed opinion of how the rest of the run is going to go, I think this unit could be useful in at least one situation. So I'm actually kind of a fan. I like 17 defense. I'm a big fan of units with big defense.
Yeah. I generally am going to recruit everyone in almost every Thracia run I do, just out of principle. But for this run specifically, I'm not going to say the run is unwinnable without Xavier, but I think he's very, very, very good for specific few situations. There is one boss skill that I think he could be very helpful for, and there is the final chapter, which is very combat heavy. And I think generally the combat demands are low, but the few combat demands that are left, I think Xavier is absolutely perfect for, because 70 defense is like really huge. It's actually not even what I was thinking of, but you're right, that does really stand out in my army. Not many people are very bulky. Thracia AI does refuse to attack if they can't hurt you. They're not willing to like suicide into you like they will suicide into FE7 Oswin. So if you got a 0 damage to Xavier, you're not going to attack him. They'll go for someone else, or they'll just not attack altogether. But there are enemies that will do like, I don't know, 3 damage, they'll attack him. And that's a very useful tanking ability. That will come handy in chapter 20, for example, for sure. What I actually like about Xavier, which sounds very weird, is his offense. I know he's a general, but if you look at his weapon ranks for a moment, he has A axes and A bows, which means he can use the master axe that he comes with, which is a brave 1-2 range weapon. Again, super helpful. The hit is low, but whatever. If I got a hit, I got a hit. And then A bows means he can use a brave bow with his massive 13 strength to do a massive amount of damage. And then if the enemy is slow enough, you can also proc a cost against them for even more attacks. And if you're attacking from range, the cost is like really, really good. So in a way, he combines some of the best traits of Selfina and Dagdar in one unit and adds a bunch of tankiness on top of it. And the rest of his skills are, I mean, not gonna say they're crucial or anything. I think generally if an enemy attacks Xavier, they're probably gonna die anyway, but Wrath will just help. Like, it kind of makes up for his somewhat less than static accuracy sometimes, right? If an enemy attacks him on enemy phase, you can Wrath him, kill him with a crit. And then Pavis, I mean, I'm never going to put in a situation where this will save his life, but it helps a little bit with reliability, I suppose. So in that way, all skills are kind of like that. So
do you think,
super solid.
Real quick, you could open up the unit list and like sort by bow rank to compare him directly to Dagdar real quick?
Oh, sure. Let me try if I can do that. Let's see. Equipment. Bow rank, you say. There you go.
That should... Oh, well, there's Selfina instead. Oh, okay. Get in the way.
Yeah.
Dang it. But they like obviously not the weapon ranks, but like the stats and whatnot. Because what I was thinking now that you pointed that out is like this just seems like kind of a strictly better Dagdar at this point. You saw how much we've been using Dagdar, right? So.
Well, the big difference between them though is that Xavier has a lot less movement and worse terrain penalties. Like Dagdar got the leg ring, so in that sense he's a lot less mobile. With warp staffs you can compensate for that, of course, but like if I'm walking across a map, I'm not going to use Xavier, right? And then also the speed is much less. I don't know how much that will matter. I don't know what the speed benchmarks are for the next couple chapters, but there might be some things that Dagdar doubles that Xavier does not. That might impact it a little bit.
Or that Dagdar accosts that Xavier does not, because you don't need 4 speed to accost, you just need 1.
Yeah, that could happen as well, for sure. I don't know.
No, that seems pretty good.
In a lot of ways, he is better Dagdar though. I'm not going to say you're wrong, but there might be situations where Dagdar is better still. And of course, I can use both a lot.
What happens if you click that icon right there in the top center that your cursor's on right now?
Oh, what, this?
Oh, never mind. I thought like the hand. There's like a hand pointing to the bow rank. I was like, what?
I think it just says like it's sort of a bow rank. It's like I never really explore menus like this personally, but I should because it's really interesting. Yeah. It's really interesting.
I'm a big advocate of the unit list. I know that that's like completely unrelated to this chapter, but I think anyone who's watching, if you don't use the unit list, you should use it more frequently. It's kind of useful.
It's true. I mean, it taught me the differences between Xavier and Dagdar, which is helpful in of itself. But I think that'll do it for the analysis and everything else you want to know about Xavier. You know, just watch the next chapters because I guarantee he'll appear like a couple times at the very least. I'm very proud.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a oh, there you go, even better. But this is a recruitable character that you have to get, and this is also an A route and B route difference. Is that because of the route that we chose? I think we went A route.
Yeah,
we get a Malda.
Yeah,
as opposed to getting Connemore here, and
yeah,
we could have killed Connemore earlier, but you know we killed like one of his calves, and they all got scared.
Yeah, I don't think the trick was going to work again, unfortunately. Pretty sure it doesn't. Yeah, if we had Miranda instead from B route, we'd be able to warp her here instead and talk to Connemore, but that is not the case. But it's a good trade-off because we get Imelda instead. I'm curious to hear your first impression on this one. Even though I think I've told you a little bit about her already. But let's see. Yeah, let's see what you got.
We did see her earlier when Ralph and Imelda were like kind of fighting in the forest earlier, and we saw her working with with Ralph, that is.
Yeah.
And like they're both doing cool. It's like, wow, we get both these units now. Like now we only get Ralph, and I was pretty happy with that, to be honest with you. To be honest, I'm kind of on the fence because like, looking at it now, like in the in-game UI, I think it looks a whole lot better. Like she's actually looking like a much better unit. When I was looking at her on the wiki, I saw these stats. I was like, what the heck is this unit? I think it's kind of bad. But I mean, she's got what? A rank swords, so gotta be all right. Oh yeah, female paladins don't have lances.
Yeah.
I was like, where the heck is her lance rank? But no, female paladins don't have lances. She just has C rank stabs, so. You can use like heal, mend, I guess.
Yeah.
Man, it's hard. It's really hard for me to evaluate this unit because like, I don't want to say Lamau, she's just another pre-promoted paladin. You know, like get behind Glade, but like, but that's kind of the feeling I'm getting here. She also doesn't. She also doesn't strike me quite like a Isadora type character, because I feel like her bulky stats like strength, defense, con are like just a bit too high to make that direct comparison. So it's really hard for me to say. Gosh, I wish I could say something smart about this unit, but like,
don't worry, she's a mysterious unit. She's a mysterious unit. I think she combines some good traits from the paladins that we have, like the kind of the flunky like paladins, like Fred and Glade and stuff, because she's a paladin and she has high sword rank like Fred and a leadership star like Glade. But she also has some traits that you would find on our staff users because she has C-rank staff, so that enables physic and mend, I guess. But most importantly, I think, is sleep and her magic, which is like pretty high for a paladin. But female paladins are supposed to be like the troubadours, I guess. Yeah. They promote from troubadours basically, so they're kind of high magic. But the great thing about a sword user that can also use staves is they can use the fire sword, and when you equip that, they get +5 magic. And so she actually has 18 base magic, which is actually higher than all my other units combined. Well, not combined, but like more than all my other units. And so she's actually one of the best units to overcome enemy magic when you're trying to like put them to sleep or silence them or whatever. Of course, this magic will go down if her, 50% magic growth procs, but it's a pretty low growth, so it's not going to happen all that much. And that gives her a lot of staff utility. She can't use silence because that is B, but sleep is still very useful. for that. And in addition, she'll also be able to provide other utility like Restore or what else is there? Like Physic, like I already said. And, you know, if you actually want to staff grind her, you can. I wouldn't recommend it. And also she's decent at combat because, you know, she can use A-rank swords. She can use like a Kingmaker, Master Sword, Fire Sword can use for combat, of course. So she's not bad at fighting either. I'm going to try not to let her do it because I really want to preserve this 30% magic. I don't want to get screwed over there. But I expect to field her a lot. I think she's actually one of the most important units for endgame if I can manage to stack her magic high enough to beat out the enemies, because the thresholds for that are really high, but I think it's possible. I just haven't looked into exactly how I'm going to be doing it. It will rely on some shenanigans I'll explain later, but I think she'll be very important for those things in particular.
So
but,
I guess I was really underestimating that C-rank stabs then, because like...
Well, you have to know about the Fire Sword thing. If you don't know about that, it doesn't look very overwhelming. Plus, like, you haven't seen the late game, so how are we supposed to know that she's really good at that specific bit, right?
Yeah, well, I was also thinking, like, late game. Isn't a bunch of these, like, upcoming maps indoors? But I've actually gone in and, like, looked at the maps, and it was like, it's about 50-50, right? Like, you know.
I actually don't know if she loses magic indoors, but I don't think she does. Sometimes units lose stats when they go indoors. Dean notoriously loses a bunch of stats when he goes indoors. While we're doing unit analysis, I owe you another one here with Misha, but I should probably mount her first.
Wonka S, no.
Alright, let us finally give her that steed that she's been wanting. And now we can look at our full stats. So, this is Misha.
Time.
Been here for a couple chapters.
We finally have her.
Yes.
Well, we didn't give her a weapon, but I mean...
That's okay. She can use all, like, lances right now.
Yeah, A swords, A lances, that seems kind of good. I mean, but, I mean, look... I remember all the way back when we got Karen, I was like, are flyers really that good? Because think about the arrive objective, you know, you got to get everyone there. But like, having seen a lot of the maps and a lot of the side objectives, I can definitely say like, okay, yeah, flyers are probably like, kind of good. You know, like just having a unit that can cart units around or get to villages or like, just do stuff is like probably going to be pretty important. Obviously, she's like our fourth one now. Like, you know, we've had Karen, we've had Edda, we've had Dean, and probably Dean is kind of surpassing this unit in combat. Like I don't really know what Dean's stats are right now, but probably doing a bit better this unit in combat. Although I mean, like I guess there's still things like, so her speed plus con is 22. What's Dean's speed plus con?
He's not fielded right now, so I can't check, but I can tell you he's a lot slower than Misha for sure.
Okay.
I think their strength might be roughly equal because Dean has had so many growths.
Yeah,
might be the case.
Maybe it's unfair to make the comparison for that, especially like for people at home who are just trying to make their like regular playthroughs or the regular first playthroughs. Like probably by now Dean is like just way better than Misha.
I think
for sure. I mean, like,
yeah. I think for Misha, I think she would rise like a tier for every chapter she's available earlier because she joins right after a stretch where flyers are super, super good. Like I think Edda is better than Misha, even though Misha runs circles around Edda stat-wise. Misha is only on A route and she only joins at the end of chapter 17. So the first chapter you can use her is 18, which is indoors. Next one is 19, where, I mean, her role in this chapter is running away, and that's not because she's dismounted, that's just the role of this chapter and everyone in general. And 20 is a defense chapter that has a lot of ballistas involved, so it might be tricky to utilize her there. I think I'm going to try to use her there, if not only just to show her off. And after that, I have trouble thinking of good things for her to do. There's like a couple like really small things that flyers can do from here on out, but a lot of chapters are indoors, a lot of chapters are staff heavy, so it's hard to fit her in there. Like, she really just missed the boat on good chapters to be a flyer in. Stat-wise, she's kind of okay though. Her movement is like 1 above average from what would be expected of her class. She has A-rank swords, really high magic as well, so she can use the wind sword that she comes with or some other magic sword to do some decent damage. Her strength is a bit lower, but she can also use like other good swords. I just named them all again, like Kingmaker, Brave Sword, Armor Slayer, whatever you want her to do. She can use all those things. There's not many opportunities for her to utilize those, but if you wanted a combat unit at this point in the game because you're actually engaging with all the maps, then she's probably half decent. There's just not too much of it left, but it's chapter 19 right now. She's chapter 20, 21, 21X, 22, 23, 24, 24X if you want to go there, and final. So there is a decent strategy game left where combat can be good. So she might actually see some use in this playthrough too, because I just have not many alternatives. But I usually don't make as much use as Misha, and I think for a growth playthrough, you'll probably have a lot of units that are better than her. But I'm not saying she's not very good. I'm just saying I haven't found much of a use for her. I guess you would put that as like dubious, but yeah. That's how I view her.
Slightly dubious uses for her. I think the only... I was trying to like use my imagination and think like times in last chapter, times in this chapter, times in some of the other ones so she can be good. And you're gonna hate me for this, Mekkah. But if you get the chance to dismount her, we kind of want to see her dismounted stats because actually just looks like a foot sword unit with A rank swords. Like it doesn't look terrible. Like she's got 6 moves, she's got A rank swords.
Yeah.
And like yeah, she loses some stats, but I think like even compared to Ralph, her speed, her strength, her defense, and like all of her fighting stats are like not atrocious. So if you wanted an A rank sword foot user, it's kind of cool. Speaking of FE5 portions,
yes.
4 characters.
Speaking of which, it's the one and only Dermot. He is very blonde in this game. He is very, very standout. So I asked Raisins for his first impression as usual on these units. I remember mine first impression. I was like, what's yours?
Oh yeah, so I mean, I did take a look at him, and even like in the context of negative growths, where like units like these, it's just a pre-promote with stats are kind of at a premium. I was like, this guy looks okay. I did like, I mean, let's go down to the skills, right? Like,
okay,
let's go to his big story. Everyone knows. Come on, it's the charm skill, right? Now, just a question. This does stack with Nana.
Yeah, it does. As in, if you put them both near someone, they'll get plus 20 hit and avoid.
That's right.
Thing. And then you can also stack it with Kingmaker.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because well, not Kingmaker on Dermot or Nana, but someone else to get like a third charm involved.
Okay, like, but that's like a statement. Like, it does work like that. Just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. So, I mean, in that case, there you go. Additional charm. So, maybe you can be more than that, I guess. If he wields the Kingmaker, does it stack with that? Or does the Kingmaker do a different unit?
No, what Kingmaker does is it gives you charm if you don't have it already. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. And
there you go.
Yeah.
It's also got the Bayo Blade. What's that give? Wrath Vantage?
Yeah, it does. Did I ever tell you if they work together or not?
I know that if you like have the normal skills, they don't work together. But in this circumstance, do they work together?
Yeah, they don't. They don't at all. I think what happened in development is they wanted them to work together initially. I think someone like Kaga was probably like, it'd be funny to put this on some copy units, like have a unit with Vantage Wrath for funnies. And then later in development, they might have been like, you know what, maybe that's actually too good, or maybe we don't want that for this game. And so they shut it off. And now Dermot has one skill that's really good, Wrath, and then another skill that negates Wrath with on the Bayo Blade. And it's just kind of sad. There are exceptions though that you might find interesting. If you ever find a way to make Dermot attack second anyway with Wrath, he will activate it. So for example, let me think I need to make sure to hit this properly, because the way Vantage works is when an enemy attacks you, you initiate combat, but it can like reverse if the enemy also has Vantage, I believe. So what I remember doing is like one particular boss late in the game that if you attack him with the Bayo Blade, you actually activate his Wrath because that enemy also has Vantage Wrath. It's very funny and very tragic when it does happen, but I forgot the exact interaction. But a very specific circumstance you can make them work together, but generally they will not work together.
So like, I mean, you did say it's kind of unfortunate that, you know, he has Vantage and Wrath, but it doesn't work together. If it just had Vantage, would you be like, alright, great unit? Because like, that'd be a strictly better circumstance if you just had Vantage.
I don't know, I would never look at this unit and say, wow, great unit, right? Because the stats just aren't there. If you had just Vantage, I mean, I just don't think Vantage is all that useful anyway, because you just have 1 to range on that sword anyway, and then 27 attack is not enough to get 1-shots. So I don't know, I don't think he's all that much better. Like, if you're playing with growth, if you're not playing negative growth, but I'm just playing, you know, casually, you're not just gonna have characters that are better than this, but you're gonna have many characters that are better than this. Like, everyone you've been trained at this point is just gonna be better at fighting than this. But I do think there's value in charm to some level, especially if you're not warp skipping a lot of maps like I will be. Maybe not in this map in particular, but the real chapter after this, chapter 22, you get a lot of leadership stars against you, just like before. And what you can do with charm is kind of negate those enemy leadership stars by stacking a bunch of like leadership and charm of your own. And you can actually like have a fair fight against the enemies. I think it's very useful for that kind of context. So in that sense, it can be useful, but that's one of the rare occasions. I think in the final chapter, there's also a case to be made that charm is pretty good there. But it's a little bit rare. And then for combat, like, even in negative growths, I have many units that are probably better at combat, but I think I can still find a use for Dermot because I don't have many units, and there is one case, again, final chapter, that like, this is all building towards the final chapter at this point, where I think I can make use of maybe Dermot's stats and maybe the Bayo Blade. I'll have to see. I can think of like a couple scenarios, but I need to like get to the final chapter to like start properly figuring it out. But you might see him again for combat for that case. He's,
and
he's
we're not
interesting.
gonna take advantage of it in this playthrough. But the Veil Blade is a PRF. It can go onto Dermot or it could go onto Fergus in case you would rather give it to Fergus.
Yeah, and Fergus can actually like slay some people with it because 30 crit is pretty good. So you can have
That's
like
pretty
100% crit with it.
He has 5 FCM as well, Dermot.
Yeah, and Dermot can also use another sword that's not listed here that we get later that you kind of need against one of the bosses. I say kind of need as in it's useful against one of the bosses. He's not the only character who can wield it, but he's one of the few. He's like one of 4. The other ones being like Leaf, Nana. So that can be something else you can do. But again, kind of dependent on circumstance. So Dermot is someone, like in summary, I think I could say Dermot can be somewhat useful in very specific circumstances and generally can be replaced by a better unit if you have unit trains with growths. But all very specific, and usually he won't be your only option, but he's a backup option in case your previous options are died or you're playing like me, negative growths for 0% or something. But
Well, I'm excited to see what you have planned for him because you said you had a couple ideas in mind.
yeah, well, not for this chapter. I like how they positioned him in such a way that he can't visit this house turn 1. He said you have to like grab it with Dean if you want to turn 1, which I'm gonna do. Yo,
Man, these sets are so good.
so
We're gonna get
cash.
them, and an FCM of 2.
Oh, that's
This is
yeah,
pretty
that's
good
right.
for us.
I forgot about the FCM. Yeah, unfortunately, Dire Thunder weighs him down by at least 12. You know what? We should just discuss him as a character. There we go. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
My first impressions.
Yes, your first
or-
impressions.
Absolutely. I mean, this guy. First off, look at his face. Handsome guy, right? Honestly, just as hot as he was in Heroes. I'm gonna be real with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, very good-looking fellow. But also, he gives us the second copy of Dire Thunder, which is gonna be really nice. Because we lost the first one with Olwen, right?
Yeah. Actually, we took it off for last minute.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we have it somewhere. So I guess we have like what is it? 100 uses of Dire Thunder after this?
Oh, I remember you said we are gonna save it for Reinhardt later.
Yeah, we did. I did
right,
say
yeah,
that
yeah.
at one point. I probably cut that part
Okay.
out though. So if you don't remember it, that's why.
Yeah, we're gonna save it for Reinhardt later. In any case, what else is gonna happen is like once we have 100 uses of Dire Thunder on Reinhardt, we've also saved a couple uses of Hammered, so that should be enough for that as well. That's like several hundred uses of Dire Thunder, which would be enough for the Thracia endgame. Especially with stats like this. Also, he's level 20, so he can't level up. This guy's literally perfect for our
Oh, I
playthrough.
forgot about that part. That's so relevant. Yeah, that's true. I don't even know why I put his growth on screen then, because he's already got all the stats that he's ever gonna have. I guess like a stat booster even further if I wanted him to have like more speed, because being weighed down by 12 is a bit of a cost. He's actually gonna have 2 attack speed with that, but it's brave, right? It's a brave weapon with 1-2 range, so
That's
what
right.
we want.
Oh, well, we want to take use of his FCM too with Dire Thunder, right? So we gotta speed
Yeah.
him up.
We gotta speed wing him up. You're right. Okay. Well, we'll see just how good he is when we actually do recruit him. His recruitment is a little bit obscure though.
That's right. It's essentially a giant megaphone through which Sarah can do the recruitment conversation.
Yeah. Like, oh boy, you recruited Reinhardt. I better attack him. This must be fate. Forgive me.
I wonder if his enemy phase is any good.
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Vantage Dire Thunder, baby.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
pretty
okay.
good. Just hope he doesn't miss, because these guys have, I believe, they have Rider's Banes. Come on, Reinhardt, you can do this.
Come
One
on,
more,
please crit.
One more. All right, nice.
Give us a crit. We should be
Another
good.
one. Oh, crits would be
Yes.
marvelous here.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah. I wish I remembered to turn
Recruit him.
generations on.
Oh, no. Actually, do they, like, if it's Berserk or no? Because I know they don't do that in GBA.
They actually turn it off for me. There's no way to turn them on, unfortunately. Nice dodge there, but Reinhardt, let's go. Can we get some Pavese in here? Don't die of Ballista, that'd be humiliating. Oh, shit. Well, I guess we lost a unit there.
Damn.
Damn.
Our deathless streak is, like, over.
Yeah. I mean, Alba. But I guess we left them behind. But yeah, okay. Well, rip. I guess we could try to beat the game without Reinhardt, to show that little twist, I need to make a very delicate move, which is move Sias 1 space down. And then because I'm doing this turn anyway, we're going to silence a goon over here. And this will demonstrate right away how good Sias is. Because, as you'll see here, he's not going to miss. Sai is that good.
Yeah, I think it's it's definitely show not tell. Look at this guy.
There you go.
Stop not missing and negative growths. Hold up.
I know, right? Oh, there we go. All right. Good Sias. Good Sias. All right. Now I can show his thing. And I've just demonstrated 2 things that are pretty good about Sias. But that's a first impression, all right? So what other first impressions are you getting, Raisins?
I guess one could say there's like 3 things. You demonstrated his move star, his stat rank, and his 16 skill. But yeah, no, he's also got some leadership stars too. Take a look at him. Right, go down there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, like Renault wishes he could be this guy. That's all I'm saying. But like, no. So obviously, like he joins very late. Like let's just get that out the way. Like, yeah, he joins very late. Like, we're practically here at the end of the game and have like a million other staff users. But I think in the context of this run, he's freaking amazing.
Yeah, he is. I will say, after this chapter is over, he's going to slim down his authority even more. We initially saw him with 10 authority stars. He's brought it down to 5 now, and he's going to lose, I think he's going to lose another 2 before next map. So he's actually left with like 3. So if you're being sold on his performances in previous maps when deciding whether to get Sias or not, because there's an alternative character set of Sias you can get instead. But if you buy this guy based on 5 leadership stars, you're going to come out with 3 leadership stars, so keep that in mind. But the Vigor stars, he gets to keep all those, and that's quite amazing.
Right. And honestly, even 3 should be enough. He's got the staff rank to use everything, and he does it very accurately. He's also got like how much move?
He's got
is that like
7 move? Yeah, you're right.
Is that an unusually high amount of move, or is that like how much you'd expect?
Yeah, I think Sloof has 6 when promoted as he promotes to High Bishop as well, or High Priest in this case. So yeah, I think he has +1 move from the base class, kind of like Dagdar, for example. Warrior should have 6, he has 7. That's right.
I mean, I think we've been through characters, like this is maybe the 6th or 7th time that we said stuff like, staff rank is kind of good in this game. But like it probably just bears repeating that this guy is definitely useful, at the very least in this map, I think. Because there is a choice between this and another unit. Yeah. But it's not like a lot of previous Samson and Aran type situations where like you don't have either one and then you make a choice. It's like you have Sias for a little bit. So you might as well make the most of them, let's just go ahead and use them, even if you want the other unit, whom we should meet briefly shortly.
I think Sias is going to be more useful than a lot of my other units right now, even though I'm not going to keep him permanently because, spoilers, the other character is much better. I'm just going to highlight, like, staff rank, obviously really good. Really high magic, something we didn't highlight yet. 18 magic is an insane amount. It's more than any of my other characters. I still think the other character's better, but he's really, really good if you want him to be. He also comes with like a lot of good stuff I'm just going to nick from him, but here we go. And this is the other half of it. This is what you unlock if you do this little convo. If you get this little character development, you also get this as a bonus.
Monster.
Do I need to even ask? Do I even need to ask?
Yeah, like, is this the first time we've seen, like, besides maybe looking at Raedric's Loptier Fane, is this the first time we've actually seen, like, stats at this magnitude?
I think so.
In our Thracia playthrough so far?
I think so.
Yeah, it's kind of big.
It's kind of huge.
Like, we were talking... Okay, actually, hold on, though. How much does the Force Eddy weigh him down? I'm just kind of curious.
6.
Okay, like, come on.
Yeah.
That's like...
So he's only got 30 attack speed, I'm sorry.
Only has 30 attack speed. What are you going to do with that? Yeah, no, these funny numbers in the top right. Avoid 122. Yeah, it seems like a lot. So, I mean, yeah, he's kind of good. Like, do we even need to get into it?
I mean, the combat speaks for itself. He murders absolutely everything. Thracia's minimum hit rate comes into play on set a lot because a lot of enemies will just have 0 hit on him on any other game, but in this game he has, he faces 1 hit still, so he can technically die. It doesn't happen often. I know that Lodos Antonia, a girl who played, or a woman who played the FE5 Iron Man playthrough, LTC ranked Iron Man playthrough, I should phrase it properly. She planned Sed to kill like 1 enemy in the final chapter, and he missed a 99.
Oh no!
But other than that, I think he's the most reliable unit that has ever existed, both offensively and defensively. And on top of that, he's got staff utility too. He's got A staffs as well. It's so stupid.
He has good adept, because like, why not?
Yeah, because all sages have adept. It's a class skill, but still, they just gave him that too. Like, what does science have in places like Nihil? Like, whatever, bro. Adept is actually like helpful for getting like really tough boss skills every now and then. And he also has 2 Vigor stars, and he's an Authority star too. Like, he has like almost every quality that Science has. Some of them in a little less quantity, but then the combat is just so much better. And then there's like a lot of random stuff you can do too. Like, if you have Meteor Tomes, you can use those. If you have Blizzard Tomes, you can use those. If you have Nosferatu, you can use that. And of course, any status staff, Restore, Rewarp, Warp, Rescue.
Is there an A-rank Thunder Tome that he can't use? Or?
I don't know what rank Thoron is. It might be A, so you might not be able to use that, which I'm not sure why they give him B there. Actually, bolting is something he cannot use. I know that for sure.
That's fair. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
Too bad. Sorry, we're sticking with Sias. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, I mean, like, obviously, maybe you might say, oh, this is just negative growth. This is why this guy looks so good. Nah, this is like, even if you had a growth unit, this guy's like head and shoulders above them in combat.
He is.
Like, it's outrageous.
Yeah. I do think if you're playing with growths, that there's an argument for taking size instead, because utility might come in more handy, whereas the combat might be overkill. But even in a growth playthrough, this guy will obviously be still very, very helpful. And it's somewhat close there, I guess, maybe. In negative growth, though, Set is much better, obviously, because we don't have these overkill combats. I need every bit of like good combat that I can get, especially combat with range. That's so valuable. It's so powerful. There is one problem with Set in negative growths. You can see this base level is 14, right? So
Yeah, his growth's like really good.
Yeah, here you go, Raisins. These are his growths.
Oof.
I mean, I'm not going to pretend that they matter a lot, because even if he had 0 speed, 4 Set, he would still be pretty fast, but damn, that's going to suck when you like fight stuff.
I feel like by the time we break the Forseti, we'll probably break the Sed too. Like,
yeah.
you know.
That's a good way to phrase it, yeah. He's going to level down some stats for sure. I do think I can spare him from most combat next chapter. It's not very combat demanding. And then in the final chapter, like, who cares, right? So that will be the saving grace for him. But, jeez.
Just use it.
Yes.
Alright, I mean, like, this guy's kind of good. Like, I can see why we're taking him over Sias.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, and here's the thing. If you see these units, remember, like, whenever I have a choice between 2 units, like, I can't really think of a single like choice between 2 units in Fire Emblem that's like objectively one of them is better or more correct. So if you're like, oh, I wanna take Sias instead, I'm not gonna scoff at you, you know, like just take him ever you like more. But in this case, it's definitely like the correct play for us to just take Sed.
Yes.
The combat is it's so good. It actually unlocks like an entirely new axis upon which we can fight, because now we finally have a unit.
Yeah.
We can just like annihilate everything.
I do think I could find a place for Sias to be useful because of the 18 magic. I just think Set straight up killing something is more useful. Okay, so meet Galzus, the big guy. Would you like combat stats, Raisins? How do you like these stats?
I mean, open up stat screen, enough said, basically, right? So it looks like Galzus, this is the guy who was chasing us in Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, I think it was?
Correct, on both counts.
Yeah. He showed up very briefly in Chapter 5, of course. I don't actually know what happens if you kill him there, whether or not he still shows up here.
He doesn't.
Oh, wow, there you go. So you can just outright kill him if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But here he is, yeah, definitely the go-to of this game. I mean, come on, take a look at these stats. Like, I know I've said that before with other units with high stats, but, like, I mean it this time. You know? Is there anything this guy's missing? Like, maybe he needs some kind of, like, holy weapon in addition to this Master Sword and Master Axe, or maybe this is just totally fine. And he's got 2 vulns, like, come on.
Yeah, his inventory is like on top of everything else is really good. I can't stress enough how good his combat is. I actually used to think he had 5 FCM and he only has 3, but honestly, when you look at everything else, it's so overkill, it doesn't even matter. He obliterates anything he fights, generally speaking. I can think of like 1 or 2 exceptions in this whole game, and that's because those enemies give everyone trouble. So if it gives Galzus trouble, it'll probably give someone else trouble too, but by like a much larger amount. If there's one weakness to Galzus, is that he only has 9 magic, 14 when he's holding the flame sword, and so enemy status stats can sometimes be a problem for him. And if he gets attacked with like 5 dark mages, he might die. That's the only weakness though that I can speak of. Everything else he just kills. He has so many different ways to just turn RNG in his favor and get a kill, even if his stats are not good enough, because the Master Axe like quadruples people and kills them instantly, basically, with 1 to range. And on top of that, the 3 FCM with 20 skill means 60 crit on second hit, and he has Astra, and he has Luna, and he has 5 movement stars, so he might be able to do it again as well. So there's if Galzus wants you dead, you're pretty much dead. If you're playing with Galzus, of course. As the enemy, you can like mess around with him a bit, but as a player unit, you're not escaping this guy. He's coming for you.
Yeah, no, he's like even the 95 avoid just looks ridiculous, and I know some of that is probably like boosted a bit by leadership stars we have on the board right now.
A little bit, yeah.
But like goodness, this guy looks insane.
He is insane. He is very fun to use, and the best news for me is he's level 20, so he can't level up any more of his stats. He's not like Sed, who's level 14. He's done leveling, so anyone I want to kill with Galzus, I will kill with Galzus, because, you know, it's all free. It's free real estate. That's your boy.
Like, this is the Athos, and Sed is the Corel.
Yeah, in a way.
He's not having the stats. No, I'm kidding.